It doesn't sound like I've got any background sound. Well, there it goes. So, how about now? Still a little bit much. I don't know. How does this sound? Well, it's kind of hard now that the thing got quiet, but whatever. Okay, well, it seems like it's kind of holding. Anyway, I know this is kind of unannounced. Wait, what's this? Overloaded. That's interesting. Anyway, today's a little bit of a stealth recording, or I should say stealth stream, because I'm mainly just unannounced. I haven't been able to stream for a while because I've had a bunch of different issues going on over on my end, and also in no small part due to some equipment issues that I've had on my end. Things not behaving properly and things like that. But besides that, hello and welcome. I'm glad you guys could make it, whoever happens to be kind of kicking in and just chilling out with me or whatever. Welcome, welcome. Like I said, I'm not really doing anything spectacular today. I'm mostly just kind of checking to see if this thing kind of works. I've had a lot of breakage and stuff, so this isn't exactly what I would call an official stream, although it's the first one I've had in a while. So, I have to admit, I've missed streaming. That's pretty wild. Regardless of whether it's like, just kind of sitting here playing games or not, but yeah, I missed being on here. I missed kind of hanging out whoever shows up or whoever doesn't. So, but yeah, I am having some performance issues here. So, it's like for whatever reason, I'm getting a bunch of encoder warnings in OBS now. Eventually, I'm gonna have to get a new system, but that's gonna have to wait until I can afford a new system. So, you know how that goes. Anyway, hello and welcome to the Chill Zone. I am your host, Grisaru, and welcome over here to a nice little chill vibe where you can come in, kick back, relax, and just hang out. So I like just doing a bunch of chill streams where, you know, we're just kind of kicking back, relaxing. I like hanging out with everybody in chat and just kind of talking, shooting the breeze, or, you know, maybe occasionally playing a game, or even just, you know, having the late night listening vibes. I know a lot of people like listening to me when they're just kind of kicking off and going to sleep and stuff, so I will accommodate as best I can. So, for those of you who've kind of missed falling asleep to the sound of me droning on and on, well, I'm sorry that I haven't been around much lately. You know, if you missed me, I appreciate that. So hopefully I give you guys something to go ahead and kick back and snooze to again. Yes, come join my stream, fall right asleep. But that's exactly what kind of streams I like to kind of do. Stuff that's nice and chill and relaxing, where you can kick back and unwind and just, you know, listen, relax, let go. Something I myself am in dire need of, kind of being able to disconnect and just relax. Oh hey, welcome. How's everything going? Glad you could join me. So, the Inavoid. But yeah, welcome on in. I do like just kind of, like I said, kicking back, having like a nice relaxing vibes and stuff. How's your night going so far? Or your day, I don't know wherever you are, what it applies. But thanks for popping by and having a sound and everything. And just kind of kicking in and listening for a minute. Your night's going good so far. Cool. Glad to hear it. And like I said, glad you kind of came and popped in. I'm just kind of in here chilling right now. I am debating what to do tonight. You know, like I said, hang out with chat, just have a nice listen. Oh, thanks so much for the follow. I appreciate that. Appreciate you. I'm glad you popped in. Normally what I like to do on Thursdays is I kind of like doing things like line redeems. Sometimes I do like channel point redeems where people can go ahead and have me drop custom lines and stuff. Things that people like, you know, hearing me say or recite or whatever else. Sometimes I also do I read different types of scripts, or a lot of times Thursday nights I especially do like story time, where I tend to read from different samplings from different books. Or like I haven't done like a full book in a while. I'll probably get back to that. I had a bout with laryngitis for a bit, so my voice was kind of sketchy for a while. And then I came back and I've been hanging out. So, is there anything in particular you'd like to listen to or like to hear? Or are you just kind of kicking back and hanging out? which is all well and good, whichever. It all works. Although, I'm going to kick back into nighttime mode here. A book does sound nice. Yeah, I was actually kind of thinking what kind of things to go ahead and read today. It's been a little while. Let me see, what have I got in MacBook? I've been reading. I've actually read like a few things. Obviously, like, you know, for copyright purposes, whatever, I only do like previews of like the first couple of chapters from different books and stuff. I've been reading like a lot of different like Japanese light novels. Kind of a lot of the popular ones, or even not so popular as that people have heard, but I've like read stuff like Ideal Sponge Your Life, Eminence in Shadow. I think I actually read In Another World with my smartphone even. So let's see here. What haven't I really hit on recently? Are you a fan of anime and manga and light novels and stuff like that, or what kind of books do you typically like to read and just kind of chill with? I'd forgotten I downloaded this. I was actually talking with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, I guess, and we were talking about different books and stuff, but yeah, the Sleeping Beauty series by Anne Rice, which she was actually going under the pen name R.N. Roquelatte when she, you know, wrote the Claiming of Sleeping Beauty series, or the Sleeping Beauty series, period. But that's not exactly something that I could read on this particular streaming platform. Maybe the Blue platform, I can do one of those. I don't think that'd exactly fly here, though. Maybe sometime. I did make a Blue account just for that purpose, just to be able to kind of screw it around with stuff like that. Anyway, let's see here. I'm looking to see what I've actually got kind of loaded, or... Oh wait, you know what? Instead of looking in this, which is acting all kind of goofy right now. iBooks is being a little bit of a pain in the butt. Hang on. But something kind of light here. Actually, you know what? I had just started rereading this. So hang on, let me get this open real quick. And I'm gonna grab a screenshot so I can put it up as for a title page. So hang on one sec here. And come on, where are you? Okay, I don't seem to have it on this machine. Let me download this a second. So I started actually reading light novels, mostly because some of the anime that I'd started to watch, like actually it started off mostly with like Overlord in particular. When Overlord first came out, when it first started dropping in the anime, I got tired of waiting. So I just read the actual light novels to get ahead of the, like, the anime series, and then that just kind of went on and on and on to the point where now I'm actually ahead where I get a kick out of when series actually come up that I've been reading at the books for, and they get anime adaptations. It's kind of cool being on that side of the curve. Of course, the flip side to that is that I haven't been reading or watching as much anime because it's like, okay, there's a difference once you actually get used to seeing the stuff, like, reading everything, and you kind of like see like the difference in the anime version versus what they leave out, because anime's got to be abridged. It starts losing some context. I can see where people get a little bit dissatisfied with that type of stuff, but I still love watching anime, so I've been a big fan. I'm just looking for where I've got this one book this book series that I'd started reading. It's like on my iPad here, but I don't have that in front of me at the moment. I might have to download it again real quick. Oh, here we go. Let me go ahead and get this set up. And I'm going to grab a snapshot of the cover image just so that I can put it up so that we're not staring at like a mostly blank screen. Where is... okay. Damn, what is taking so long to come up? I'm still waiting for the book to actually properly open. My computer's being a little bit of a potato today. Again, this is why I'm testing the stream. I've been having some issues with this potato of a computer. So let's see here. It does not want to open. Why is that? Alright, so I'm still trying to get this thing to open up properly. iBooks is giving me a problem all of a sudden, so hang on, let me try killing it and reopening it again real quick here. Sorry, things are being, like I said, today's a test stream for a reason. Things have been a little unstable over here, so let me try getting this open again. So this should have loaded up. But for whatever reason, it is giving me a problem here. I wonder if it's just the book that's being stupid. Okay, no, it's iBooks. Or, wait a minute. No, I think it's a problem with the book. Hang on, give me a sec, let me download it real quick here again, because... Yeah, it's probably the book itself. Let me just double check it here real quick and make sure that it's not corrupted or something. And then I'll go ahead and I'll get this opened up and we can start. Oh yeah, okay. It's the book. It's not... There's a problem with the actual book itself. So, give me one quick sec here. Let me fix this. At least I want to say it's the problem with the book, but my computer is still giving me some issues. So... Even though it's been a while, one thing that seems to be the universal constant when it comes to streaming, at least, you know, for this particular VTuber, it's always all about the scuff. It wouldn't be a stream without proper amount of scuff going on. But I don't know what this major malfunction is. So this is going to be one of those days where things just really do not want to cooperate. Alright, give me a second here. Let me do it this way. Or let me think I'm going to do it this way. Come on. Like the actual crap. So anyway, I'm glad your guys' nights are going pretty well. Because mine is being a pain in the butt right now. It'd be nice if I could get this started out, but this thing doesn't want to cooperate. I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out and kind of like, you know, wading through all of this. All things. So the book I'm trying to open up is called I'm the Evil Lord of an Intergalactic Empire. I'm like, alright, do I really want to kind of go through all this just for this one particular book that just doesn't want to cooperate, or do I just want to switch books? So if I can't get this open this time, I'm just going to switch books to a different one. doesn't seem to want to cooperate. So, alright. What else have I got open? Or something more convenient. Let me pick another book. One that's actually, that'll open up. Although that's kind of weird. Why did this... Okay. So, is it gonna open? Is it gonna open? Oh wait. Survey says... Maybe. Maybe. There we go. Alright. Okay, cool. So now it wants to cooperate, which, fine, I'll take it. So let me... Hang on, let me go ahead and grab a screenshot here real quick so that I'll put the cover up like I'd originally intended. And okay, so for the image, hey, how's it going, Vin? Good to see you. Good to see you. Long time no see. Welcome back. Yeah, thanks. Good to be back. Good to be back. Also, congratulations on redeeming first place. Right now, I am trying to get the screenshot for the book that I'm about to go ahead and read. Like the first couple of chapters on here, but OBS is still giving me some... Actually, it's not just OBS. I'm still having a couple of issues with this potato, which I eventually will get replaced. But until then... So how have you been, Vin? Why doesn't this want to do anything, or am I stuck? I mean, it doesn't sound like it, or it doesn't look like it. Okay, so the stream is still going, but for whatever reason... So OBS is just kind of stuck on me right now. Oh, there it went. Apparently I had to think for a minute. Alright, hold on. Let me... Okay. There we go. So if I turn this on... Okay, cool. So you're good, been very productive with motivation, can start updating your weekly thread on... Hey, by all means, absolutely do. I haven't been around, so yeah, I apologize for myself being ducked out for a bit with, like, issues kind of going on and stuff. But... Alright, so what I'm going to go ahead and do, I am going to read the first couple of chapters out of this book. Hey Sarah, how you doing? I missed you guys too. Thanks so much, I appreciate that. So, it's good to be back. So this is kind of a little bit of a stealth stream that I kicked up, just to kind of test and see whether or not the equipment was going to play nice and stuff. I've had a bit of issues for a while, so I've been gone for a little bit, but this is kind of like an unofficial test run, I guess you could say. But I decided that yes, today we're going to go ahead and I am going to read probably a couple of different books, because, you know, like, again, I can't just go and blanket read everybody without permission. Like, I'm trying to avoid like the whole copyright thing. But so we'll do light novel preview reads tonight. And then, of course, if you guys have, like, you know, other things you want to hear me read or say or whatever else, then by all means, I can take requests as well. But I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad that you guys are here hanging out with me tonight. So, let me kick in over here to the prog. Actually, let me go ahead and rehydrate for a minute, and then I'm gonna just jump right into this. Or I will as soon as the ebook reader plays nice. Okay, so prologue. From the cockpit monitor, I looked out into space. Lights sparkled all around me, and explosions too, like something straight out of science fiction. Countless tiny streaks of light flashed in the distance, some resulting in small explosions. Inside each and every one of those explosions, hundreds or perhaps thousands of lives were snuffed out. Space battles take the lives of a vast number of people. During one such battle, where tens or hundreds of thousands of people might perish, I raised my voice and laughed aloud. "What's wrong? Is that all you've got?" The weapon I piloted was a humanoid vehicle, a mobile knight. As weapons, these 14-meter behemoths presented a number of flaws. Why did they have to be humanoid in form instead of something like fighter jets? This fantasy world seemed unconcerned with such rational questions, however. My mobile knight was black and titanic. While most other units were around 18 meters tall, this one was on the larger side at 24 meters. In my mammoth machine, I grabbed smaller units around me with manipulators, as its dexterous hands were called, and crushed my enemies' machines along with the pilots inside them. "Please, spare me!" An enemy pilot begged for his life, but I just smirked coldly and said, "Die." There wasn't a speck of pity in my voice. I felt no guilt killing my enemies, only joy. Trampling another person and taking their most precious possessions from them, their life, that was a privilege only the strong possessed. Weak, too weak. Isn't there anyone strong? I laughed as I piloted my craft, mowing down all the enemies that approached me. I aimed for their cockpits and the pilots within. I mercilessly thrust the laser sword gripped in my mobile knight's hand into an enemy cockpit, then kicked the unit away, ripping the blade back out. "You weaklings are nothing but prey. At least try to entertain me." All this horror was the work of a boy who appeared to be in his early teens. In my previous life, I would have objected to such inhuman acts, but now I knew better. It's the bad people who have all the advantages. That was why I'd vowed to be a villain in my next life. No, a supervillain. If someone were to describe my current position, they would call me an evil lord. In this strange, fantastical land, humanity had advanced far enough for intergalactic travel, yet it still had a completely outdated aristocratic form of government. In this world, I was a count. I ruled over a planet of my own, terrorizing my subjects. If this were a story, I'd be the villain for the protagonist to defeat. But in reality... Are you done? Come on, come at me. I haven't had enough. Give me more. I chased down the enemies fleeing from my machine and took them down without mercy, a textbook villain. There wasn't a speck of pity in my voice. I felt no guilt killing my enemies, only joy. Wait, hold up. Sorry. Wrong page. Reread that. This world had no heroes. I could torment the weak all I liked, and no one would stop me. In this place, might made right. That was the conclusion I had reached at the moment of my death in my previous life. This is so much fun. Crushing weaklings is the best. It just confirms how strong I am. In this world, people warred with giant humanoid weapons and spaceships. Reincarnated into such a world, I intended to use the immense power I'd been given to live a life of tyranny. It all started on that day, the last day of my previous life, when I was deceived and died in the pit of despair. The harsh memories revived in my mind, memories of a man who'd led a foolish life, not even realizing that he was being destroyed. Yes, my previous life. That fool was me. Why do I have to go through things like this? I clutched at my chest. Sorry. Sorry, an error came up. Here we go. Why do I have to go through things like this? I clutched at my chest in my shoddy one-room apartment. It had been bothering me for a while now, but recently the pain had gotten a lot worse. I would have gone to the hospital, but I didn't have the money. My hand pawed helplessly at my chest, too weak to exert any force. The bruised arm reaching into my unwashed t-shirt was thinner than it used to be. I coughed up blood, staining the filthy futon I lay on. Why is this happening to me? I was in physical pain, but the mental anguish and the frustration I felt were no less painful. As they say, my life was flashing before my eyes. I was by no means a saint, but I had tried to live an honest life. I'd never committed a crime, and I'd lived as best as I could, according to the standards of virtue set by society. I'd gotten a job like I was supposed to, gotten married as expected, had a kid, and bought a house. Yet I was now shouldering debt and working multiple part-time jobs. I paid child support every month, yet I'd never once seen my daughter since the divorce. According to my ex-wife, our daughter was finally starting to get along with her new husband, which is why she kept denying me visitation. Meanwhile, the company I used to work for had fired me for having an affair and embezzling, neither of which I had done, and I'd had to get multiple part-time gigs just to survive. I'd never had an affair, and I'd never embezzled any money, but no matter how much I denied both claims, everyone around me treated me as though I were guilty. No one believed a word I said. I'd never forget the despair I felt at the time. I was treated with such scorn by those around me that I had to wonder now if I really was to blame for it all. That was how much their words affected me. And now I'd hit rock bottom. I had so much debt that I would never be able to repay it, and I was living in poverty in a tiny room with hardly any belongings. Nearly every day, some thug or another came demanding I repay my debts, but I didn't even remember borrowing any money. Still, for some reason, there were debts in my name that I was obligated to repay. Now that I thought about it, it was probably my ex-wife's doing. but I didn't have the funds or energy to talk to a lawyer about it. At some point during the last few years, without realizing it, I'd started to waste away. I looked a lot older than I actually was. Every time I glanced in the mirror, I seemed to be on the verge of death. What did I do? Just where did I go wrong? Every time I coughed, I spat up more and more blood. It looks like this is the end. Overwhelmed with all this frustration, I was just relieved that it would finally be over. That was when it happened. A man in a striped tailcoat appeared beside my futon. He stood on my dirty tatami floor in his shoes, a traveling bag in one hand. Good evening. And what a lovely evening it is. I shifted my gaze, and in my hazy vision, I saw a man with a top hat in one hand greeting me. His eyes were hidden in shadow, so all I could see of his face was his mouth. He was tall and thin, looking down at me from above. Something about him didn't seem real. The brim of his hat and the ends of his tailcoat moved strangely, and though he wasn't on fire, he was emitting a peculiar smoke. I doubted he was of this world. "What are you, some sort of ferryman?" I asked, my voice hoarse and weak. It hurt my chest just to talk. I didn't have the energy to scramble away in fright, nor did I plan on it. All I felt was a strange sense of resignation and the hope that I would finally be free from my suffering. Then I remembered something. Many years ago, I'd heard that when you died, an old pet from your past would come to guide you away. I'd had a dog long ago, but it... Sorry, my computer hung. We're trying to hit the next page. Waiting. Why is iBooks not responding? There it goes. Because OBS is taking up all of the processing power, that's why. So, I'd had a dog long ago, but it hadn't come to meet me. Guess I was just made up, or I wasn't a good owner. If I'd had one regret, it was that my dog hadn't been the one to come get me. The man knelt down beside me, drawing closer, but I still couldn't see his face above his mouth. The corners of his lips lifted into a crescent moon smile, as though he were laughing at me. True, I am a ferryman in a sense, though I'm not taking you where you think I am. The truth is, I'm here to send you to a different world. Therefore, you can just call me your guide. I started coughing, and the man snapped his fingers. I was shocked to find that the view in front of me had completely changed. I saw a man in an expensive suit having dinner with my ex-wife in a fancy restaurant. The meal set before them looked delicious, as did the alcohol they were drinking. I hadn't had anything like that in years. That wasn't what shocked me, though. How could I be witnessing this scene that floated before my eyes? I wondered if I was dreaming, but the pain in my chest felt as real as ever. And it wasn't just physical pain. There was pain in my heart as well. I also heard the conspiratorial conversation the two were having. "You're a real piece of work, aren't you? You foist all of that debt onto your ex-husband, and you make him pay child support too. It's not even his kid." Clearly it was me they were discussing, but I couldn't believe what they were saying. No, I didn't want to believe it. It's fine. Legally it's his kid, and child support is a parent's duty, isn't it? I struggled to wrap my head around it. What was my ex-wife saying? In the past, she had been kind, even naive, yet here she was talking about deceiving me with a nasty smile on her face, like a completely different person. Like a different person, but unmistakably my ex-wife. Women instinctively seek out men with superior genes to have children with. I didn't need a kid with a man like him, I just needed him to make me some money. Actually, he should be grateful since I allowed him to marry me. He was only ever worth that much. The man seated across from her seemed exasperated by her words, but his expression also suggested he was enjoying it. Women are scary. You're the one who made me this way, aren't you? Watching them only made my chest hurt more. Rage bubbled up inside me at the scene and at the guide who revealed it to me. Oh, don't be angry. I only showed you this because I wanted you to know the truth. It makes sense, doesn't it? It's not an illusion. This is something that's occurring right now. When I thought about it, it did start to make sense. Until now, I'd closed my eyes to it under the impression that I was merely overthinking things. You have a truly good heart, enduring a life like this and still working hard to repay her debt and pay child support. Yet, all this time, it was nothing but lies. Can they really get away with such evil? In response to these injustices, I've prepared a little present for you. The man merrily removed some pamphlets resembling travel brochures from his leather bag. You've been very unfortunate in this life. In your next life, wouldn't you like to be happy? What do you think? How would you like to be reborn in a different world? A different world. I could barely process what he was saying. I was so full of rage and frustration toward my ex-wife. My chest throbbed again, and I spat up more blood. I realized something else then, too. Was he embezzling also? I asked, regarding my former job, and the guide nodded. That's right. That was your boss who framed you for his crime. You did nothing wrong. I get it now. What a fool I've been. I was deceived over and over again. You've worked so hard that your body gave out on you. And here they are, enjoying a decadent meal together. It's just horrible, isn't it? I gripped my futon. What had been the meaning of my life? Why was it ending this way? Revenge. Let me take revenge. I can't let them get away with it. I want revenge on all of them. My tears of frustration felt endless. Even they were bloody now. Why was this my fate? What had I done to deserve it? I cried at the state of my body, which could barely move anymore. I would never be able to take revenge like this. For a moment, the guide's smile grew even wider, but it swiftly vanished. It didn't seem as though he would grant my wish. Unfortunately, your life is at its end. All I can give you is the gift of a happy second life. This one has been cruel to you, but your next life awaits. I'm afraid you'll have to give up on revenge. No, I squeezed out, barely able to utter the word. At this point, no matter how much I suffered, I just wanted to make them suffer too. I would do anything for that. Anything. Yet the guy just shook his head. All you can choose is what sort of world you'd like to live in next. Go and be reincarnated in the world you desire. A happy life is awaiting for you this time. I sobbed in vexation. The guide held out his pamphlets like a magician asking me to choose a card. One of the worlds he offered was a place of swords and magic. Another a place just like Earth but with the existence of superpowers. In yet another, the land masses floated in the air with the clouds. None of them really spoke to me, except for one with a humanoid machine and a space battleship on its cover. I reached out to this pamphlet, my consciousness hazy. When my bloody fingers touched the brochure, the guide began his explanation. Come on. Ah, you're interested in this world? I recommend it. It's a fantastical place with both advanced science and magic after all, not to mention an intergalactic empire. It's really quite fun. People live long lives there as well, so you can look forward to living much longer than you did here. I'd chosen without thinking all that much, except how crazy it all sounded. What had I even lived an honest life for? For this? To be deceived, laughed at, without even being able to take revenge for it? It's so unfair. If this is what happens when you're good, then I should have enjoyed my life more. I should have worried more about my own happiness without sparing a thought for other people. Good karma isn't worth shit. It's all a lie. And if that's the case, then I want to live for myself. I'll live for myself as a villain who tramples other people underfoot. In this world, if you want power, you'd have to be nobility. These people are culturally advanced, but for some reason, the feudal system made a big comeback at some point. It's quite interesting. The guide continued his explanation as he watched me writhe in pain. I'll make it so you're born into a noble house. You'll start your next life as an aristocrat with a silver spoon in your mouth, as they say. I wanted to smile at his words, but I didn't have the luxury. I was in so much pain now that I couldn't even respond. My soul, however, would live on past this body, and I would never forget this day. Living an honest life is idiotic. If I'm going to be born an aristocrat, then I'll be able to do whatever I want in my next life. I'll rule with an iron fist and be as evil as I please. The guide was doing his part, setting things up for me. A count sounds good. That would put you in charge of a planet. That sounds great. Pretty important position. I'll be an evil mage. No, I'll be ruling over a planet, so an evil lord? Anyway, I'm gonna enjoy myself. So, you've made your peace? I trust you'll have a nice life next time then. Yeah, I think I will. I'll make my next life a good one. My life as an evil lord. At that point, my consciousness faded into darkness. The guide looked down at the man, who had died with a smile on his face. He twisted around, grinning with insane glee. An unhappy life? Give me a break. People as unhappy as you are a dime a dozen in this world. You think you had it bad? You're deluded. With a snap of his fingers, the image of the man's ex-wife and her lover were projected into the air once again. Cackling obscenely, he observed the pair. You two sure came in handy, didn't you? Well, I've enjoyed myself enough. Let's wrap this up. This man who called himself a guide was decidedly not the type to wish for another's happiness. Just the opposite, in fact. He looked down at the dead man in front of him and laughed, pointing his finger. Who do you think made you unhappy in the first place? It was me. I just wanted to see how far I could make a good person fall. I got a lot more fun out of it than I thought I would, though, so I came up with a continuation to make it last. This guide was basically a creature composed of malice, who loved unhappiness and lived on it as sustenance. Negative emotions, especially from people he made miserable, were his greatest nourishment. He had done it countless times. The man lying before him was just one such victim. Now then, before the main course, I should polish off the hors d'oeuvres. He reached out and touched the image, and black smoke poured out of him. It coiled around the pair in the projected image, but they didn't notice. As they discussed the dead man, their cheerful conversation started to change. The man's smile faded, his expression turning grave. He said to the woman, "Well, we've both had our fun, haven't we? I think it's about time to end things." "Huh?" The guide chuckled, relishing this turn of events. "Now show me how far you will fall." Dumbfounded, the woman dropped the knife she'd been holding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying our little play relationship is over. It's run its course, right?" She looked lost, bewildered. "Are you joking? If you're serious, then you know you're going down. You think I don't know all the things you've done?" The man was cool in the face of her threats. "If you want to put up a fight, then by all means, do it. But don't forget that the lawyer who helped you with your divorce is a friend of mine. If you make a scene, you'll be the one who ends up in hot water. I'll expose you for setting up your ex-husband and helping his boss embezzle from his company." "What about your daughter? You're just going to abandon your own child?" "Legally, it's his kid, right? Plus, he's paying child support, isn't he? I'm sure you'll do fine." When she realized he was being serious, the ex-wife could only tremble. She barely managed to squeeze out, "You said you loved me." "And I did, but I've lost interest. That's all there is to it. If we both enjoyed it while it lasted, that's fine, right? Just find your next love." "I can't do that." The ex-wife clung to the man, but he peeled her hands off him and made to leave the restaurant. "Don't touch me. I'm not interested in you anymore." "Wait, please, listen to me. I'll do anything. Don't leave me." The ex-wife pleaded desperately, but the man simply looked at her with eyes like ice. They were nothing like the couple who'd been happily chatting a few minutes earlier. "What are you, stupid? You really thought I was going to marry a cheater like you? Use your head, why don't you? If your ex-husband fell in love with you, then he had terrible taste." If those words were true, then this man had never loved the ex-wife from the beginning. When he'd said he loved her, he'd lied. Realizing that, she couldn't even bring herself to speak anymore. Clapping gleefully, the guide said, "Fantastic! What will she do next?" The ex-wife's despair flowed into him. He gobbled up her rage and sadness, all her negative emotions. They filled the guide's heart, satiating him. With clenched fists, the woman hung her head. "I left my husband for you. Your ex-husband. And you enjoyed driving him into a corner, didn't you? Don't pretend you're the victim here. You were the one who left him." "You said it," the guide laughed in amusement, then read the ex-wife's thoughts. "Oh my. She's reconsidering him now, even though he's already dead. Women sure are tough. It's too bad. The man who loved you is dead, and his last desire was to have revenge on you." The guide cackled, banishing the scene in order to enjoy the next step of his plans. "I look forward to seeing if you try to get back to your husband, or if you try to find a new man. Unfortunately, happiness will never come to you." He'd made sure either option would only lead to more unhappiness. That was what it meant when the guide stepped into one's life. Now then, I have to guide his soul to a world where lives are cheaply consumed. A happy world. For me, that is. The guide wouldn't stop smiling, thinking about the world he was about to enter. By the time he realizes it, it'll be too late. This is going to be so much fun. He wasn't supposed to be like this, he'll cry. He'll be filled with resentment, anger, sadness, and it'll be all directed at me. He'll hate me, and his hate will only nourish me. The guide, who loved nothing more than the negative emotions of humans, spread his arms wide. He simply couldn't contain his mirth when he imagined the feelings this scheme would soon produce. Whether he becomes a villain and sows despair in that other world, or becomes unhappy himself and overflows with a hatred for me, I win. Now, it's time for my fun to begin. No matter how things went, he was certain to enjoy himself. The guide's anticipation reached the point of ecstasy. Oh, it's almost time. I'll return here after I finish guiding his soul. These fools, they all rejoice when they hear they'll be reincarnated. These are truly fantastic times. All it takes is a few sweet lies and they fall for it. He picked up his bag excitedly and, with a snap of his fingers, summoned a lavishly decorated wooden door, which looked completely out of place in the shabby apartment. This was his means of traversing the many realities. The guide turned the knob and opened the door, revealing a swirling mass of black and purple. He stood there for a moment, lifting a hand to his chin in thought. In the corner of the room, a small light seemed to observe the guide. The vague light watched him in secret, but it gradually grew larger and took on a more defined shape. Its outline was blurred, but it appeared to be a dog. After casting a forlorn look at the deceased man, the figure of light glared at the guide, though it went unnoticed. I don't know how I should make the most of this. Let's see. First I'll have to decide where to reincarnate him. It's fun enough putting him in a happy family and making him suffer afterward, and I did do just that, but maybe better to have him work his way up and then knock him back down. I wouldn't want him thanking me for the opportunity before the fall, though. The guide clapped his hands together. Well, I'll play it by ear for now, though at the end, I think torture and a public execution would be good. I'm looking forward to seeing him curse me and die in despair. I can hardly wait. The guide embraced himself and squirmed with mad glee. Your next life should be longer than this one. Longer and more painful as well. I do hope you'll struggle throughout this for the sake of my happiness. Making up his mind, the guide headed toward the door, looking rather refreshed. However, unbeknownst to him, the little dog made of light leapt through the door with him. When the door to the other world closed, it vanished from the room, whose only occupant now was the man's lifeless body. Damn, I kind of forgot what a downer the prologue was. Hang on, let me hydrate, and I'll go ahead and I'll continue to chapter 1 at least. So. Chapter 1. Liam. It seems the guide was telling the truth. Here I am in my second life after all. My new name was Liam Sarah Banfield. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a boy with black hair and amethyst eyes. This reflection waved back at me when I waved, so I was certain it was me. I was 5 years old, playing in a child's room, when I became conscious of my past life. There were numerous toys on the floor around me, but what immediately caught my eye was the size of the room. Pretty big. Even taking my vantage point into account, the room was large. It was a child's playroom, but it could probably fit a small house inside it. I appeared to be pretty well off. The guide had told me I'd be born into a noble's house, someone with authority, and he must have kept his word. My vague memories of my current life confirmed that. This was the family of Count Banfield, and I was his heir. The Count ruled a planet in the Intergalactic Algorand Empire of the Albereto dynasty. In the future, I would rule this planet. In the scale of the entire empire, my station wasn't too impressive, but I liked the sound of ruler of a planet. There would be no one on my entire planet who could defy me. As promised, I smirked. I didn't know why the guide had chosen me for reincarnation, but I would probably betray his expectations. If he was expecting me to do good in this world, then I was going to have to disappoint him. After all, I'd learned in my previous life that doing good was worthless. I'd planned on becoming a striking example of an evil lord. Of course, that presented me with my first problem. What does an evil lord or like a bad noble even do? In fiction, they would oppress their people, so I should do the same? When I thought of evil, what came to mind was booze, women, and gambling. Does that sound right? Should I just be a glutton? My image of an evil lord was rather vague. Should I increase taxes and accept bribes like a crooked politician? Well, I'm sure that just doing as I please is fine. This is getting pretty exciting, Something fluttered down to land on my head. I picked it up and saw it was a letter. When I opened the neatly sealed envelope, I found a message from the guide inside. He sent me a letter. Why not just show himself again? I found the answer to my question within its contents. It started with congratulations for my successful reincarnation. Then it told me the guide was busy, so he wouldn't be able to watch over me for some time, but that he would make sure that I got the assistance that I needed. Apparently, someone else would provide help in his place. Help? In this place? From whom? I was alone in the room with no one else nearby. While I cocked my head, curious, the door opened. A man and woman stepped into the room, attended by a group of people behind them. Their names surfaced in my mind. My memories told me that these were my current parents. My father was Cliff Sarah Banfield, my mother Darcy Sarah Banfield. The pair walked over to me with smiles on their faces and handed me something that looked like a glass tablet. I saw some sort of document, apparently a contract, on the green-tinted surface. The writing was unfamiliar to me, but I seemed able to read some of it nonetheless. It appeared to indicate that my father's peerage and domain were being transferred to me. They're just giving everything to a little kid? I was a bit confused by the sudden development. Father, what's this? I wasn't sure how to handle this news, and more than anything else, these new parents of mine were nothing more than a bother to me, really. They didn't show up all that much in the vague memories I retained. What's going on here? I looked up at the man I had awkwardly addressed, and he patiently explained things to me. After he'd spoken, though, I was even more confused. Happy 5th birthday, Liam. My present for you is everything that House Banfield owns. Everything the Banfield owns is a birthday present? You're giving me your peerage, your domain, and all the responsibilities that come with them to a 5-year-old child for his birthday? Is this guy serious? So I thought, but then I recalled the letter I'd just read. It had vanished from my hands at some point, but I wondered if this is what the guide had meant by help. Such a wild turn of events might be possible for a supernatural being like him. Next, my mother Darcy happily held out a catalog to me. And this is my present. I'll buy you a robotic maid to take care of you. Pick whichever one you like. On the cover of the catalog was a robot that had been created to look like a maid. Actually, it looked just like a human, so I figured it was an android. When I opened the catalog, it projected images and videos around me that I could view from all angles. It felt very futuristic, which was intriguing, but I wasn't really sure what came next. What do I do with this? Darcy kindly explained how to use the catalog. You can use this to customize your maid. It's easy. Just choose which parts you want, like this. See? Go ahead, make a nice cute one. Apparently, you ordered robots like you were creating a character in a game. You chose not just their appearance, but also the internal parts and materials that determine their functionality. It was pretty interesting. I chose all the high performance parts, which made a number at the bottom, I assumed that was the price, shoot up with each selection. It was already 3 digits higher than it had been originally, but I wasn't the one paying for it, so I decided to make the maid ridiculously high spec. For its looks, how about an Eastern beauty? Her hair would be long and black, tied back in a ponytail, bangs a little longer on the right. I made sure to give her a good figure too. As I went through, choosing various attributes, my hands stopped at a certain selection. Now this was surprising. Cliff teased me for hesitating, which annoyed me, but he didn't seem to understand why I'd stopped. He eyed the 3D projection of the model I'd constructed so far. He sure is my son. He's got great taste. Children do love breasts, don't they? I ignored the two of them and slowly made the selection I'd been hesitating over. It added an adult aspect to the robot. My parents just smiled as they watched their child order a robot that was fully functional for sex. What a bizarre situation this is. The complex expression on the face of the aged but stately butler standing behind them, Brian Beaumont, left quite an impression on me. He looked at once saddened and confused. My parents really are weirdos, right? Anyway, something else had occurred to me at this point. Was the helper that the guide had referred to actually this maid robot that I was ordering? So the first thing he does is get rid of these annoying parents of mine and gives me the ideal woman to stand by at my side and act as his agent. I'm thoroughly impressed by his consideration. These parents would likely only bother me, so it'll be easier if they're just not around. Plus, I can't trust a real woman. A maid robot is truly a thoughtful gift for me. After all, I don't have to worry about betrayal from a robot. It said so right in the catalog, under the slogan, "Made just for you," at the top. Maid robots will never betray their masters. If I had a faithful, capable retainer whom I needn't worry about betraying me, that would give me some real peace of mind. Thus, I kept ignoring the price and tacking on as many optional features as I could. After the final confirmation of her specs was a screen to pick out the maid's uniform. I selected a classical outfit, since a miniskirt would really be too much. I hesitated a bit over whether I wanted the length to be above or below her knees, but in the end, I decided on just above her ankles. My, how cute! Happily looking over the completed model, Darcy was another strange sight. Your son just bought a maid designed completely to his adult tastes and fully functional for sex. What exactly about that makes you so happy? We can leave Liam in the care of this robot now, can't we? She asked. Yep, nothing to worry about, Cliff agreed. Suspicious of my parents' attitude, I asked them, "Are you going somewhere?" Cliff raised his chin and proudly declared, "We've bought a mansion on the Imperial home planet, the capital. We'll be moving there and you'll stay here and protect your domain as its lord. You just have to sign this document first." I looked down at the electronic document that transferred my father's title and land to me. All the servants around us looked rather confused, so this must have been an unusual occurrence. I mean, it's gotta be, right? This guy's giving everything he owns to a 5-year-old. Unusual doesn't even cover it. Once I've signed the document, Darcy handed me another one. "Here you go, Liam. Sign this one too." This document guaranteed that I send my parents living on the capital planet a sort of yearly allowance. They're giving everything to me and going to live in the capital, eh? These two really are some sorry excuses for parents. Unbeknownst to them, their darling son is a reincarnation, a middle-aged dude on the inside. It's kind of hilarious. It was actually pitiful that this man and woman would have their status and everything they owned taken away by basically a complete stranger. I still didn't see them as my real parents, but I felt bad enough for them that I supposed I would send them some money every year. "Okay," I chirped. I felt a smile come unbidden to my lips. I had taken everything from my ignorant parents. As I gazed down at the signed documents, I looked forward to what the rest of my life would bring. A few days later, Liam's parents headed to their domain spaceport, accompanied by some guards. They boarded a specially chartered shuttle, but sat some distance apart. The lavish shuttle would take them into space, where they would board a greater ship that was headed for the capital planet in the center of the Empire's vast territory. The capital was far more developed than some Count's planet deep in the outskirts. The two sat without looking at each other. They didn't seem particularly close. While reading an electronic newspaper, Cliff spat. "You got him a doll? What kind of mother are you?" Meanwhile, Darcy drank tea as though she couldn't care less what he had to say. There was no love in their relationship. Their marriage had been one of political convenience. "That child's nothing more than a product of my genes. How am I supposed to love him with a face like that, and when I didn't even give birth to him myself?" Liam had been produced artificially using his parents' DNA. To both of them, he was nothing but an heir. Darcy continued, "Besides, you're one to talk. You think it's okay to just foist everything off onto your 5-year-old child? Well, did you want to stay?" "Are you kidding?" Darcy took another sip of tea, then voiced her many frustrations. "If I hadn't known I'd be able to get out later, I never would have married into this country bumpkin house. We've got no money and nothing but problems. It's just terrible. Of course, I don't feel great about fooling an ignorant child. Giving him that doll was the least I could do, don't you think?" Cliff smiled. He'll just be a laughingstock. A noble with a doll at his side? People are going to talk about him behind his back his entire life. Whatever, it's got nothing to do with me. I'm done with him now that he's the Lord. Having made robots, sometimes called dolls, was looked down upon in noble society. It was common for anyone who possessed one to be scorned. "It'll do him more good than any old servant, though," Darcy said. "It's not like we have any knights or retainers to give him. Plus, if something happens to him, then we'll have to come back, and I do not want that." "True, wouldn't want that." "Is it really okay to just force everything onto a child, though? We're not going to get into any trouble for that." Darcy was more worried about her own future than Liam's. Cliff grabbed some booze he'd ordered from a crew member and gulped it down. He loosened his collar, clearly feeling relieved to be freed of his responsibilities. "Don't worry about it. There's precedent, and I got approved from the Imperial Court. Plenty of people do the same thing. It's fine. Nowadays, nobody cares who's Lord, and nobody who wants to rule that backwater planet anyway. So who'll complain?" The Empire had approved of Cliff giving his title and assets to a 5-year-old. It was an unusual occurrence, but there was reason for it. The Empire doesn't want anything to do with the boonies either. Long as somebody's in charge and doing their duty, they don't care. The Intergalactic Empire was so vast that it was almost impossible to govern all of it. It didn't help that the Empire was historically resistant to using artificial intelligence to assist with its government. The use of AI of any type was kept to an absolute minimum. This was because, in this world, humanity had nearly been wiped out by the artificial intelligence they'd created. Humanity had once been ruled by AIs, and the people who rose up against them had created the Empire. Therefore, the nobility didn't approve of things like made robots, which utilized artificial intelligence. The current trend was that they would be used if needed, but only at a bare minimum. Darcy looked down at their planet from the shuttle's window, the planet ruled by the House Banfield. It hardly looked like a civilization capable of space travel. The planet's level of development had been forcibly restricted, and the people there lived under a vast amount of debt. Liam will probably be furious when he finds out what he's been saddled with. Cliff was starting to turn a little red from the potent drink. He'll just push it off onto his own kid and flee to the capital, like me. A planet no one would be happy ruling over. That was Count Banfield's domain. At 5 years old, I had become a count who ruled over a planet. Now that's power. I'm basically a king. There are many counts in the Empire, so the Banfields were just one of a great number of families of the same rank. But inside my own territory, I was the supreme ruler. Seated in the chair in my office, which was much too large for my child's body, I received a report from my butler, Brian. "Your maid robot has arrived, Master Liam." Brian had served the Banfield family for a long time, and he had handled all household matters. He was a slender man approaching old age who maintained his appearance more than adequately for his station. He was the kind of man who would have made me nervous in my past life, but in this one, my authority superseded his, so I spoke down to him even though I was a child. "Bring her here, then." "Yes, sir. Come in." The door to my office opened, and the maid robot that I had modeled in 3D appeared before me. She strode in gracefully, her posture perfect. I'd been expecting to see a robot that looked just like the image I'd created, but her beauty far exceeded my expectations. Sorry again. eBooks is lagging. There was nothing unnatural about her movements. Nothing about her appearance that screamed, "I'm a robot," other than the label on her shoulder that immediately identified her as a maid robot. All of the maid uniform designs featured bare shoulders to make this mark visible. This was necessary as they looked exactly like humans otherwise. She was so well made that I doubted there was any other way than that label to tell she was artificial. She made her way up to me and performed a gesture that resembled a curtsy, holding up her skirt and bowing. Then she introduced herself in a beautiful voice. "Pleased to make your acquaintance. I am your Amagi, Master." I'd been expecting her to sound somewhat unnatural, to have a robotic voice, but she sounded exactly like a human speaking. I'd named my maid robot Amagi, which I thought suited her black hair and Japanese looks. Brian hadn't reacted to the name, so it seemed like it didn't come across as strange. Apparently, Japanese names weren't completely out of place here somehow. "She will take care of you from now on," Brian explained. "However, she'll need to undergo regular maintenance." "Maintenance?" I glanced at Amagi, who was standing stock still after finishing her introduction. "Maintenance is necessary once a week. It should take about 2 hours," Amagi supplied. "Huh, I thought she'd run a little longer than that." Sensing my displeasure, Brian hurriedly told me why maintenance was so important. The body must be checked every week for irregularities. It gets cleaned as well. If something seriously broke, the manufacturer would have to repair her, so it's important to undergo these checks regularly. Actually, it was pretty impressive that she could function for a whole week on just 2 hours of downtime. I turned to Amagi and held my arms out. Sensing my wish, she made her way over to me and gently picked up my small body. Her arms around me felt exactly like human arms. I touched her chest, her large breasts far too big to fit into my tiny hands. That's ideal softness right there. She had perfect breasts, not too soft and with spring to them. "Master Liam, you mustn't do such things in front of other people," Brian warned me hesitantly. Brian had been serving my family for ages, managing the household since my great-grandfather's time. Since the mansion couldn't be maintained without a butler, I couldn't easily fire him, but I was his master. I thought it would be stupid to begin acting like a 5-year-old at this point, so I decided to abandon all childishness now that I was in charge. I'll do exactly as I like. Anyway, what's the status of my domain? With a disappointed look on his face, Brian touched the bracelet he wore, and holographic images appeared before him, graphs and numbers that represented the state of various parts of my domain. There was a map too, but I didn't know what any of the figures meant. "I don't get it." "I don't suppose you would," Brian said, again sounding disappointed. There was no way I could understand it. I mean, in my last life, I'd just been a normal salaryman. I had no knowledge of how a territory should be ruled. Plus, this was a society developed enough to have an intergalactic empire. An amateur like me was only going to muck things up with whatever stupid ideas I came up with. I knew this guy named Arata at my old job who loved isekai stories, but his favorite trope, where the protagonist pulls off hacks with his modern knowledge, wasn't going to come in handy here. Arata was one of those so-called otaku. I wonder if he's doing well. He taught me a lot, but he quit the company before I was forced to leave, so I remembered him fondly as one of the people who hadn't disparaged me. I should have talked to him more. This is a problem, though. I have no idea what to do. That could very well mean that I'm unable to do anything. Nothing good and nothing bad either, putting my evil lord aspirations on hold. While I was pondering this in Amagi's arms and fondling her breasts, she spoke up. Master, I am equipped with functions to assist in governance. Would you care for my assistance? Really? I had no clue what to do. Can you even help me at this stage? Of course, said Amagi. I would recommend utilizing an education capsule. In the meantime, I will manage your domain in your stead. You may think of it as an emergency tactic. Brian's face paled. It seemed he didn't agree with the suggestion. You mustn't! The Empire will not accept management by an AI. They are only permitted to provide support. Amagi replied coolly. The Empire has no such law. Utilizing artificial intelligence as little as possible is simply preferred. As Master does not possess the knowledge for governance, I have merely suggested the most efficient option. However, I will only do as Master commands. Both Amagi and Brian looked to me. Have her rule while I studied in an education capsule, eh? Education capsules were incredibly convenient devices. Once you were submerged in the liquid inside them, they would install knowledge directly into your brain. They would also strengthen the body. In one such capsule, the equivalent of elementary and junior high education could be accomplished in half a year. It was a miraculous invention that compressed 9 years of learning into 6 months. The only drawback was that even if the capsule drilled knowledge into you and enhanced your physical strength, these attributes wouldn't stick if you ceased to use them once you came out. It was like how you could carry around a dictionary, but if you didn't use it, it was meaningless. You needed to undergo some physical therapy after you left the capsule as well. Since you came out of it physically different than when you first went in, if you didn't train to acclimate yourself to your new body, it can be dangerous just living life as normal. Also, you were basically sleeping the whole time you were in the capsule. You couldn't do anything else. Still, it was endlessly more efficient than regular studying. I can't do anything now when I don't know any of these numbers and graphs mean. If that's the case, then there's really only one choice to be made. Brian, ready the capsule. Amagi, I put you in charge of my territory while I'm in there. Master Liam, you can't, Brian shouted. Amagi simply said, as you command. It seems she won't listen to orders from anyone but me. That's wonderful. A far cry from a flesh and blood woman. However, I will try to persuade Brian, even if it is annoying. Listen, Brian. You don't want me making decisions about things when I don't know what I'm doing, right? This is necessary. Perhaps, but think of the scandal. It's just for a little while. If you understand me, then get it ready. Plus, if I can leave these matters to someone else, that's fine with me. I don't care about their hang-ups about artificial intelligence. Damn, though. I didn't think I'd have to study just to exploit my subjects. Oh well, I'll play nice for a while. I'm still a child in body after all. Even if one day I'll torment my subjects and extort taxes from them, I wouldn't want to do it as a kid. I thought such things as I fondled Amagi's breasts. domain of Count Banfield was in fact significantly less culturally advanced than Liam's previous world. For one thing, there was no reason for its ruler to ensure its people lived comfortable lives. Since they had education capsules at their disposal, if the Lord had wanted highly knowledgeable personnel, he could have simply recruited anyone and given them the education they would need. From its ruler's perspective, all the planet required was a sufficient population to work without complaint and pay their taxes. And House Banfield wasn't the only one. There were some lords in the Empire who forced their people to live at medieval levels of civilization. To the citizens of their territories, their nobility had absolute authority. Hey, Lumi. Yes, I'm live. Kind of a little bit of a, sort of a stealth kind of stream where I was mostly just testing my setup, but, you know, I'm here reading and stuff. Kind of putting the Thursday night pay through its paces. And congratulations on redeeming second place. I'm glad you could make it. How was dinner? Dinner was non-existent, but I mean, I thought you were going to go, after you ended stream and stuff, I thought you were going to go ahead and get dinner like an hour ago or so. Actually, over an hour. Oh, and hey, 180. Congratulations on redeeming third. You updated your YouTube instead. I should do that. Streamer duties. I have to kind of check my hard drive and get my YouTube channel up to date. So, the people who had long been ruled by the Banfields had just learned they had a new ruler, and they were rather anxious at this news. In one particular town, the mood was dark and uneasy. Inside a seedy old bar, a weary-looking bartender conversed with another man who had stopped in on his way home from work. The topic of conversation? Liam, of course. Yeah, thanks for stopping in, 180. Yeah, have a good time or whatever at work. Do you hear? The new lord's a tender 5 years of age. There's being too young and then there's that, am I right? Glancing down at the glass he was drying, the bartender replied, They might increase taxes because of these changes too. It had been bad when Cliff had taken over. That had been hundreds of years ago at this point, but since it wasn't unusual for people to live several centuries in this world, the bartender still remembered. The last guy used taking the reins as an excuse to collect some pretty ridiculous taxes. The last two Count Banfields had both been terrible lords. Liam's great-grandfather had actually been a good ruler, but there were no traces left of his legacy now. The two lords who had followed him had squandered all the riches he'd amassed. Now only the elderly told stories of how people in the past had lived blessed lives. The newer generations knew only hardship. Gulping down the cheap booze that would quickly get him drunk, the patron also voiced his frustrations. Are we just livestock for these nobles? You shouldn't speak so loudly. Let's just hope this new lord's a good one. You really think that? Hey, it's not impossible, though it's probably pretty close. How am I supposed to hope? The customer muttered, laying his head down on the bar. None of Liam's subjects had any hope for him. I'm going to go ahead and continue on with chapter 2 of this, so that would actually be like, 3 sections? Like the first roughly 60-70 pages of the book. 70 of 300. Let me go and hydrate real quick. Chapter 2. Swordmaster. 2 years had passed since Liam had taken over his domain. Brian, House Banfield's butler, privately lamented again today as he walked through the mansion. The house, which had been rebuilt 2 generations prior by Count Banfield, Liam's grandfather, was eccentric, to put it mildly. To be honest, it was in poor taste. When visitors arrived, they would grimace and endeavor to try not to bring up the house in conversation. Many of them would wear strange smiles on their faces. The halls twisted and turned in an almost labyrinthine fashion. It was common for newly hired servants to get lost in them. As Brian turned a corner, he found some servants chatting in an inconspicuous spot. It was a young man and woman. The man was a gardener, but he'd left the yard in the hands of a machine and was slacking off, hitting on one of the maids in her short-skirted uniform. "Come on, it's fine, isn't it? We'll get in trouble if they find us." "They won't. There's plenty of unused rooms." "Yeah, true. Just keep it a secret, okay?" The man put his arm around the maid's shoulder, and the two of them left, blowing off their work. They didn't change their behavior when they saw Brian, nor did they greet him. The previous Count, Cliff, had prioritized appearances when hiring servants, ignoring capability and personality. For that reason, the mansion was filled with workers of low character, leaving Brian frustrated. What would Master Alistair say if he saw this? Things had once been different. When Brian had first started with the Banfields, they'd had a proper mansion and servants who took their job seriously. Liam's great-grandfather, Alistair Sarah Banfield, had been a wise ruler, and Brian had been proud to serve him. Things had started to get rough when Liam's grandfather took over. From then on, the situation had deteriorated quickly. House Banfield's debts rose as quickly as its reputation fell, plunging the family into a dark age. The Count had lived a life of utmost luxury, burning through the family's assets while levying harsh taxes on the people to squeeze as much as he could from them. He was unable to give up the life he was accustomed to, and even when he went into debt. Then, when his debts became too much to handle, he forced everything onto the next Count Banfield, Cliff, and fled to the capital planet like a fool. Having been raised by such a father, Cliff turned out to be no better. As he lamented the state of House Banfield, which no longer resembled the family he had originally served, Brian arrived at the Count's office and adjusted his uniform, straightening his back. The device next to the door lit up and transmitted his voice into the room. "Master Liam, it's Brian." Liam's voice came from the device. "Come in." The steady voice, which didn't seem like it had come from a young boy, made the butler a little nervous. Brian opened the door and entered the room to find Liam sitting at his desk assessing the state of his domain, Amagi at his side. Amagi supported Liam in a secretary-like role. Liam was upset, irritation plain on his face. It was an expression Brian could hardly believe a child's face was capable of. "What can I do for you, Master Liam?" The office's desk had been made for an adult, but a child's chair had been provided for Liam. Climbing down from that chair, Liam joined his hands behind his back and paced about the room, looking like a child playing at being important. In actuality, Liam was quite important. Though a child, he was a count and lord of a domain, and no one on this planet could speak out against him. "Brian, I've never been outside the mansion before." "Indeed. The mansion is equipped with all facilities for the education and physical therapy you receive, after all." Up until recently, Liam had been sleeping inside this educational capsule. Instead of the usual 6 months, he'd spent a full year inside, acquiring a thorough education in physical enhancement. Then, when he'd left the capsule, There had been physical rehabilitation and a review of the knowledge he'd gained waiting for him. If he wanted to go outside, there were inner courtyards for him to use, so there'd never been a need for him to actually leave the mansion. He still didn't need to, which is why Liam previously hadn't noticed how bad the house he lived in looked. I was curious, so I finally went outside. This mansion looks awful, doesn't it? Brian agreed, but as his butler, he couldn't speak ill of his early master's taste. I would say it has a creative design. Spare me your flattery, Liam shouted, stamping his little feet. He shot a look at Amagi, and a projection of the mansion his grandfather and father had built appeared before them. The main house, a vacation home, and various other buildings hovered in holographic form around Liam. They were all terribly shaped, each building completely lacking in design sense, even seeming to give off some sort of ill will. Are you stupid? You've got to be stupid, right? Why the obsession with strange shapes? It's humiliating to live in this thing. Aren't you embarrassed? I'm embarrassed. I'm relieved that Master Liam has normal tastes. Brian felt a twinge of happiness at that. It didn't change the fact that their estate was full of terribly shaped buildings. Some of these buildings had been set aside for relatives of the Banfields, but knowing of the family's current financial situation, the relatives in question had all fled for the capital planet already. No one lived in them. Another of the reasons Liam had so easily taken over the family was that none of these relatives had been around to object to it. Then again, no one wanted a territory like this. The family hadn't had vassals or knights for generations. Knights were much more powerful warriors than ordinary rank-and-file soldiers, forged through training to have practically inhuman strength. The majority of these individuals served nations or lords within the empire. Possessed of many talents, these mighty warriors were not just skilled fighters, but served as commanders as well. However, not a single one of them served House Banfield. As for the reason why, they'd either learned of the family's financial troubles and gone off to serve other lords, or they'd obeyed Liam's grandfather's orders and followed him to the capital planet. As such, Liam had no knights in his employ. When it came to government officials, general military personnel, and servants, there wasn't an abundance, but Liam had enough. It was just these exemplary individuals whom he lacked. It breaks my heart, thought Brian. Leaving everything to such a young child and fleeing to the capital would have been unthinkable in Master Alistair's time. We'll demolish the whole estate, Liam declared. I don't want this mansion. I'll build a new one that suits me better. What about those employed to maintain the other mansions and villas? Brian responded, somewhat flustered. Liam's irritated response was, I don't care. Fire them. Just fire them outright, Brian thought, but Amagi offered a comforting suggestion. Master, we should provide new employment for the servants. Also, I suggest waiting a little before constructing a new mansion. Why is that? I agree with demolishing the estate to reduce the cost of maintaining it. However, building a mansion that suits you will take time. Therefore, I suggest first building a residence that functions as the most basic level, while your proper mansion is being readied. Brian was relieved to hear the suggestion. I guess it's better than accruing more debts. But won't it cost a lot to demolish everything? Still, in the long run, that's better than paying to maintain these ridiculously huge buildings. Liam pondered for a short time, then agreed with Amagi's proposal with a nod. You're right. We should take our time building the perfect mansion. Where will we get the money, though? Amagi was quick to provide another suggestion. I believe restructuring the army would suffice. The army? The Empire allowed the Lord's personal armies for the defense of their domains. Liam had only just begun to get a sense of the state of his territory, so he didn't know much about his army yet. Amagi showed him some data, and he reacted with fascination. We've got 30,000 battleships? That's a lot. Amagi nodded. Yes. However, less than 20% of these ships are operational. They had 30,000 ships, but couldn't even use 6,000 of them. They were all fairly old models too, so their army was actually a lot more bark than bite. The current number of ships is unnecessary, so we should cut them down to a number we can realistically maintain. I suggest a minimum of 3,000 ships, which would drastically reduce the cost of maintaining the army. Brian was shocked at Amagi's suggestion. A mere 3,000? Liam was having a hard time wrapping his head around these numbers. Is that a lot or no? I'm not sure how to decide. Please wait, Brian cut in, reluctant to see Amagi's suggestion approved. A count is generally expected to maintain an army of 10,000 ships. I advise against reducing our forces to a mere 10%. Liam cocked his head, but only 20% of them are even operational. It was true that their fleet's current operability was too low, but visibly reducing the size of the army had its own problems. Brian said, "The operability is not the only issue. If we reduce the size of our army, those around us will take us that much less seriously as a result. And it won't just be the nobility. Pirates will come running." Reducing the army to 1/10 of its size would give other nobles more cause to look down on the family for its financial situation. It wasn't unheard of for neighboring lords to go to war even within the empire. Being held in low estimation would make House Banfield vulnerable. There was another troublesome group in this world. Pirates. Space pirates, to be more specific. They were so troublesome, in fact, that some large pirate armadas were more than a match for ruling lords. A large army was a good deterrent for such foes. No army would bother attacking a territory protected by 30,000 ships. However, Amagi had a counter argument ready. Currently, we would need 1,000 of our ships to go up against a fleet of 100 pirate ships, due to the age of our equipment and the skill of our soldiers. Rather than continue with such an efficient army, I believe we should reduce the scale of our forces while increasing the utility of our personnel. Liam made his decision quickly. We'll reduce our army then. He accepted Amagi's proposal despite Brian's stark opposition. Master Liam! Tears welled up in Brian's eyes, but Liam would not hear his objections. I don't need people we can't use. Amagi swiftly drew up the plans to reduce the size of the army. We will begin the reorganization immediately. This should provide us with a fairly robust budget. What a pointless display. 24,000 ships we can't even use except as decorations. Brian was starting to get anxious. Liam accepted suggestions from AI all too easily. Master Liam, you're relying on artificial intelligence too much. You must use this machine, not be used by them. Other noble houses will believe House Banfield is in decline. Liam snorted. You talk like the family isn't in decline. If you don't have a better suggestion, then keep quiet. Brian's shoulders slumped. Of course he didn't have any suggestions. He was only a butler after all. He had no place in discussions of political or military affairs. Looking at Amagi, Liam said, "Having too few forces wouldn't be good, though. I can't make light of our military situation. Will we be able to bring our numbers back up eventually?" This caused Brian to revise his opinion of Liam once more. What? He's giving it more thought than I imagined. Amagi nodded. It seemed reducing the size of the military wasn't her entire plan. Eventually, we will amass a force befitting a count's army. We will begin with re-education and retraining to create an elite force, then increase the number of our troops as the financial situation of the territory improves. She suggested removing excess personnel from the military and putting them into civilian jobs to stimulate the planet's economy. Liam agreed with her reasoning. I don't need an army that's just for display. What I do need is an army that can fight. Go ahead with the reorganization, Amagi. One day, we'll turn it into an armada befitting a count. No, befitting me. He asked Brian, any complaints? We'll have 30,000 ships again eventually, but we'll make do with 3,000 for now. Brian wiped the sweat from his brow with a handkerchief. No complaints, Master Liam. Satisfied with Brian's response, Liam turned back to Amagi. Carry it out at once, Amagi. Yes, Master. This decisiveness even as a child. He almost reminds me of Master Alistair, Brian thought. He was starting to see some similarities between Liam and the brilliant lord he'd once served. However, well, that's one problem solved. Amagi, up. Yes, Master. His tendency to enjoy being held in the arms of his doll, Amagi, even in front of others, was not something Brian could commend. In his mind, he complained, Master Liam, please do not sit in Amagi's arms and fondle her breasts in my presence. I have no clue what sort of expression to make. Okay. Actually, before I continue, let me go ahead. I need to refill my hydration, my water real quick. I'm going to leave this here for a sec. I will be right back. Give me about a minute or so, a couple minutes. Alright, I am back. Things are more dire than I'd expected. Thank you. When I got out of the education capsule, finished my rehabilitation, and got a look at the state of my domain, I was rendered speechless. Thanks to the knowledge installed in my brain, when I saw the data, I was able to comprehend what it all meant, whether I wanted to or not. And because I understood, that made it all the worse. Exploit my subjects. These people don't even have anything for me to exploit. The world I had reincarnated into was one of a highly advanced scientific and magical civilization, or at least it was supposed to be. In truth, the people on this planet had a less developed civilization than Japan, where I'd lived my previous life. At worst, they were about at the level of pre-war Japan. This was an intergalactic civilization, a world where space battleships shot beams at one another in war, yet it seemed like my territory alone had been completely left behind by the times. There was no energy to the people living here either. They just barely managed to pay their taxes. Even if I wanted to oppress them, they couldn't be any more oppressed than they already were. It was like a land that had already been bled dry by an evil lord, and I hadn't even done anything yet. Why is the civilization here so far behind, I griped. Amagi explained the reason matter-of-factly. Cultural development occurs with no effort. It would be easy for the nobility to leave the people to their own devices. However, if civilization develops too much, it becomes much more difficult to manage. Is that why? Then manage with artificial intelligence. We do, and it does as much as it can under the prescribed minimum use rules. The nobles in this world bled taxes from their citizens and allowed them to achieve as little cultural development as possible. If they left their people alone, the population increased, and if they needed workers with intelligence from that pool, they could simply toss them into a capsule for education. They kept the people just oppressed enough that they didn't acquire too much knowledge. There was no room for me to do anything. My time as an evil lord was over before it even begun. Did my parents just force a completely worthless domain on me? Could the guide have tricked me? The thought went through my head, but Amagi was there to set me straight. Master, it is true that House Banfield's domain is in a rather starry state, but I believe things can get better from here. If you make good use of the taxes, you will see results in another 10 or 20 years. People lived long lives in this world. They didn't reach adulthood until 50, and at 50, they looked like someone around 13 in my old world. There was still war, which affected the average life expectancy to some degree, but I had learned it was still around 300 to 400 years. Plenty of people lived to be 600. From that standpoint, 20 years seemed rather brief. 20 years, huh? Yes, in 20 years, you can advance civilization in your territory. Oops. If Amagi says so, then I suppose that's that. I'll see how things go then, for 20 years. It won't be any fun exploiting my people as they are now. My body is still young. I've got plenty of time, so I'll just invest in my domain for now and reap the rewards later. Put everything but the bare minimum funds into maintaining the planet. I'll take it back later. And Amagi, I want power. While I was biding my time, there were all sorts of things I wanted to obtain. Power? The military? No. Personal power. My own power. Your own? You wish to train your body? That's right. I want to become strong, through martial arts or something like that. Violence had frightened me in my past life. I was afraid of the burly men who came to collect on my debts. Before that, I'd always thought violence was meaningless, but after landing in that situation, I began to feel you really did need physical power. In order to rule with an iron fist, I wanted power enough that I wouldn't have to fear anyone. The power to exact violence on whomever I wished, hence my desire for a strong body. I had not believed such a thing as necessary for you, Master. The bare minimum training would suffice in my opinion. No. Find me a top-class instructor and don't skimp on the budget. This is a necessary expense. In order for me to hold on to what was mine. In order for me to make me be the victimizer instead of the victim, I needed power. In what could be called the threshold between worlds. Everything was dark, nothing visible nearby. The only thing in this space was the grinning guide. He sat on his travel bag as if it were placed on solid ground and happily watched an image hovering before him. In the image was the haggard figure of Liam's ex-wife several years later. His ex-wife in his previous life, that is. She was walking down the street, exhaustion written on her face. Looking very worn out there. Your hair's a mess and your clothes look cheap and shabby. She was working through her savings, barely managing to support herself and her daughter. The guide was satisfied at how much the woman had changed. All around him were similar images of other people in distress, people he'd personally brought misfortune. The negative emotions of those people filled him up. He felt power welling within him. Oops, can't be getting all my kicks from a bonus like you. I should check in on Liam. Oh, I'm so busy. Busy as he claimed to be, he was enjoying himself to his heart's content. He reached out his hand and a new image appeared. It revealed a 7-year-old Liam conversing with his doll. The guide chuckled. Unable to trust in flesh and blood women, he's put an elaborately made doll at his side. It's hilarious. Plus, he doesn't seem to have realized this is putting his status as a noble at risk. What an amusing situation. Best of all was that Liam didn't seem to realize the misery of the situation. I might as well take my time savoring... Oh? In the projected image, Liam was saying that he wanted power. A person who'd been afraid of violence in their past life wanting power in their new one. The guide couldn't get enough. He wants power to hold on to his, eh? Typical. But that's what's so good about it. The guide touched the projection with his hand. Black smoke wafted from his body and seeped into the image. I know the perfect person for your needs. Don't worry, I'll keep watching over you. This is an ongoing service after all. The guide pulled some streams of fate, tugged them really, to find the man who would instruct Liam. Once he'd done this, the man was guaranteed to fill the position. Liam had requested a skilled teacher, yet this man was anything but. Enjoy, Liam. When you meet your doom, I'll be sure to come and collect you. The guide wore his crescent moon smile, only his mouth visible in his face. Kinda looks like my bitrate dropped into the toilet for a bit there. Hopefully it recovers. I can't tell if it's lagging for you guys or not much yet. A solo traveler arrived at House Banfield's spaceport. He was an aged man in a kimono and purple hakama, with messy hair and a scruffy face. A katana rested at his hip. Out in the middle of nowhere, this place. The man's name was Yasushi, and despite his sloppy appearance, he had come to teach Liam martial arts. However, it wasn't truly Yasushi who was supposed to be there. They'd requested a real martial arts master, but the man in question had coincidentally learned of House Banfield's misdeeds, and thus hadn't wanted to accept the request. For that matter, he didn't even know if House Banfield could pay the fee that they were offering. Therefore, the original master had volunteered Yasushi for the job instead. Damn it. If only I hadn't borrowed money from that guy. The sight of Yasushi lamenting with slumped shoulders was rather pathetic. He didn't appear in the slightest like a man in possession of martial prowess. Yasushi had accepted the job on the condition that his debts would be cancelled, but when he saw the deserted, rundown spaceport, he started to regret his decision. I wouldn't want to come here even for my real job. Frankly speaking, this man was not strong. He'd studied all sorts of martial arts, but hadn't managed to stick with any one of them for very long. Instead, he merely boasted of having mastered the martial arts and made his living by showing off techniques that boiled down to magic tricks. Well, the client's a kid, so it should be easy enough to fool him. But I almost feel bad that he has to learn how to fight from me. Yasushi had learned the basics, so he'd be capable of teaching the boy, but the basics were all he could teach him. He wouldn't be able to impart any advanced techniques or killer moves, as he didn't know any. In all honesty, even his grasp on the basics was starting to slip at this point. The only reason he'd accepted the job in spite of all this was because he needed the money. Well, it'll work out. A bratty kid would get tired of it quickly, he figured. If he praised the kid enough and kept him in a good mood, that would probably satisfy him. The katana, though. I tried dressing to look the part, but what a strange kid to make these requests. Katanas existed in this world, but they were not what one would consider mainstream. They would never fall out of popularity within a certain niche, but the vast majority of swordsmen preferred Western blades. It had been a long time since Yasushi had held one. Well, time to trick a kid out of his money. This man's true profession was the performing arts. He'd only been chosen as Liam's instructor for the guide's machinations. And again, got a little bit of lag in the book. Okay, actually, hold on a second. Let me see if what I can kill off to help improve performance in this. Although it's probably a little bit late for this, but I guess maybe better late than never. So, hopefully this helps. Hang on, let me try closing this as well real quick. Chapter 3, The Way of the Flash. An old man with an odd vibe about him had shown up. The man, Master Yasushi, sat across from me in the mansion courtyard, his legs folded under him. He looked serene, seated there on the grass. His unshaven face and shabby kimono made him seem like a masterless samurai or something, but the air he gave off was slightly different. In any case, I suppose this was what a true master of martial arts looked like. Lord Liam, Master said my name slowly and quietly. Yes, I shrank back a little, but he gave me a smile. There is no need to be nervous. First, let me explain to you the school of swordsmanship to which I belong. Master showed me his sword. I knew that katanas existed in this world, so I figured if I was going to learn something, it might as well be that. No deep thought had gone into the decision, but it was looking like I'd chosen well. If I can learn from someone like this, I was right to pick the katana. The school of swordsmanship I use has a secret technique, Lord Liam. It is not something I can show just anyone, but I'm sure you wish to see my true ability. In which case, I will reveal this technique just once. However, no one outside our school may see it. Only you, Lord Liam. I hadn't expected him to start with a secret technique. I figured this was something that he'd be protective of, but he had a kindness to him, and he seemed very serious about teaching me. Master must be quite an upstanding person. However, standing behind me, Amagi was giving Master a rather distrustful look. For Liam's safety, I cannot allow that. You're being rude, Amagi, I scolded her, but Amagi wouldn't budge. Your safety is my first priority. Master didn't seem at all perturbed. He merely stated, quietly but firmly, that I will not be able to accept this job. He was so calm, even in front of a count. This guy was the real deal, practically oozing confidence in his own strength. I want to learn from him. Amagi, I will allow it. Unable to oppose my fierce determination, Amagi reluctantly acquiesced. If anything should happen, please call for help immediately. Take this as well. What is it? She'd handed me a device. There are many swordsmen who are swindlers. Please use this to investigate him. Investigate? Yes. It detects devices used in fraud. I trust you do not mind. Amagi directed her gaze at Master, but he just sat there smiling. I don't mind. I will watch from a distance then, Master. Please be careful. Amagi went off, leaving me alone with my master, who stood and handed me one of a number of logs he'd prepared earlier. "You're going to cut this?" It was just a regular old log. The fraud detector didn't show any reaction to it. "Yes, that's right. We'll start by placing these in areas my sword can't reach. I'll leave their placement to you, Lord Liam." I designated locations for these logs, and Master stood them up on the ground accordingly, until they were all around him in different spots. They were far enough away that he couldn't reach them even if he drew his katana, one being over 5 meters away from him. Master began to explain his method, his sword still in its scabbard. "Lord Liam, the secret technique of the Way of the Flash is the height of martial prowess, and it utilizes magic as well. This is the only technique you will ever need. As for the rest, you need only focus on the basics." I gulped, awed by my master's presence. The swordsmanship of this world was fantasy swordsmanship. In a world where people could slash their swords while ignoring the laws of physics, to have only one particular technique was a rather extreme style. The Way of the Flash, huh? It must have been an incredible art. You must not reveal this technique to just anyone. However, if you master it, it will not matter if someone witnesses it. This is the secret technique, the Flash. Master took his left thumb and pushed up the guard of his sword, then let it fall back with a satisfying clink. That was the only motion I saw as he stood there, posture relaxed. "What's wrong, Master?" I asked, thinking his silence odd, but then I heard a log falling behind me and turned toward it. No way! All the logs had been cut and were lying in segments on the ground. The cuts were clean, and all the logs having been sliced in different places. They weren't close enough for a sword to reach, so is it something swift and fluid like Aido? But when did he draw his sword? I didn't see it. While I was puzzling over everything, Master took a deep breath. "This is the signature technique of the Way of the Flash." I quickly looked down at the device, but nothing happened. "When did you cut them?" In response to my surprised question, Master snapped his sword for me once more. Another log was sliced, the one standing right behind him. The device didn't react at all, not detecting any signs of fraud, and I stared up at him in awe. "You will understand as you learn the Way of the Flash. Finding the answer yourself is part of the training. Let me ask then, do you wish to learn the Way of the Flash?" "Of course I do." I gave him a big nod. "Yes! This fantasy world's amazing. I didn't expect there to be such an amazing move. If I can master this, I'll go stronger for sure." This kid's easy to fool, Yasushi thought as he looked down at Liam, who stood before him with his eyes glitter. Excuse me, sorry. He felt a little guilty tricking such a young child, but he had to make a living somehow. Pretty unfortunate for him that he has to learn from an amateur. He was putting on an air of importance for Liam, but the man was by no means a master of the blade. All air and no substance, that was Yasushi. "Well, nobles are all rotten anyway. I'll make as much money off this kid as I can." He eyed the logo he'd cut. The technique he used to make himself look masterful was simple sleight of hand. All the logs had already been cut, save for the one he'd given to Liam, which he'd then switched out for another. "Don't judge me later, kid. It's your fault for not picking up on such a simple trick." Yasushi glanced at the device in Liam's hand and gave a quick sigh of relief. "Whew, I was a little nervous there. I was glad that thing didn't go off. If it had, I would have just said it was because I used magic, but is it broken or something? Whatever." In fact, the fraud detector Liam was using had one flaw. It would react to signs of sophisticated deception, but not primitive sleight of hand, In other words, the device hadn't picked up on Yasashi's trick because it was just too simple. "Let us get started on the basics then," Yasashi told him. "Yes, master." As he looked down at the child, who didn't doubt him for a minute, Yasashi chuckled to himself. It had been 3 years since Yasashi had begun teaching Liam swordplay. Liam practiced the basics almost every day, and Yasashi watched him from afar. "Kids sure learn quick. I'm jealous. What should I teach him next?" Yasashi had taught Liam the basics of not only the katana, but short swords, spears, and a number of other weapons, plus unarmed fighting. He'd sold it to Liam as learning the characteristics of other weapons. There was only so much Yasashi could teach him, however. Mostly, he found free videos of entry-level martial arts know-how and passed those on to Liam. He parodied impressive-sounding quotes from famous people, and the kid found his own meaning in them. All in all, he was having a pretty easy time of it. Resting in the shade of a tree, Yasashi looked over at the new mansion. The unique building that had stood there previously had been demolished, and a very simple house had been built in its place. It was such a modest structure that you never would have guessed it was the dwelling of a count. There are a lot of nasty rumors about House Banfield, but he does seem to be living pretty frugally. Liam's treatment of Yasashi was by no means bad either. In fact, the count seemed to value the man so much that it was almost a letdown. I thought nobles were supposed to be slothful and domineering, but that kid's pretty serious. Liam was different from what Yasashi had expected. Today, he was once again practicing diligently. "I don't see the point in a noble training like this. Won't his subordinates protect him anyway?" Yasashi yawned, but there was no problem with it. Well, there was one problem. In a mere 3 years, Yasashi was already running out of things to teach Liam. The boy practiced the basics earnestly and learned quickly. To be honest, he was now stronger than Yasashi. Now, if Yasashi were to execute an unskilled move or make a badly thought-out comment, he was worried the boy might be able to see through him. This was why he presently just watched over Liam. "This isn't hard, but that doll observes us every so often. Why the heck does he have one of those things anyway?" Nobles typically wanted nothing to do with dolls. Even if they happened to own one, they only did so in secret. That was another reason Yasashi found Liam so odd, though he had a rough guess as to the kid's reasons. Giving peerage and territory to a kid who doesn't know anything. Nobles sure do some awful shit. Yasashi just assumed that, having been raised in an insulated environment, Liam wasn't wise to the ways of the world. But his domain's developing because of it. How ironic. Over the past couple of years, Liam's lifeless planet had started to get a little of its energy back. Former soldiers and other people of his domain who'd undergone job training were now working to improve the planet's infrastructure. Dormant facilities had been revitalized, and more tax money than ever was going back into the economy. Despite this, the family's debts were as massive as ever, and they still were short on funds. Poor kid. He's working so hard without knowing a thing. Almost brings a tear to my eye. Yasashi felt a touch of sympathy for the boy, but that was it really. He didn't intend to tell him he was being swindled, not when there was still money to be made. There was one thing that was bothering Yasashi though. I bet that kid hates corruption. He might erase me if he finds out the truth. Liam was a rather serious type among nobles. If he uncovered corruption, what would he do? This was Yasashi's sole concern at the moment. Slowly after I started learning martial arts, my new mansion was completed. I was expecting something a lot simpler, but from my point of view, it was still fairly impressive. Maybe this will be good enough. It had been meant as a temporary mansion, but I ended up satisfied with it. It was plenty big, with tall ceilings. It wasn't unique or eccentric, just a normal mansion that would cause me no inconvenience to live in. I was signing documents in my new office when Amagi asked me about my future plans. Master, when would you next like to enter the capsule? Is it that time already? A person had to use the education capsules in stages. You couldn't just go into one for decades and complete your whole education. You had to make use of them in a number of sessions before reaching adulthood. When should I? Whenever you'd like. Your next session should take 6 months. I'll go in soon then. While I'm inside, I'll leave ruling to you. We continued working quietly until Amagi came upon one document in particular. Studying the electronic record floating in the air, she suddenly started checking several others as well. What is it? Please look at this document. It had been cleverly concealed, but there were clear signs that the figures in one official's report had been doctored. Embezzlement. Summon whoever submitted this. My voice was lower than usual. Amagi bowed. Very well. A few hours after Amagi contacted him, one of the higher-ranking officials of my domain reported to my mansion. The man wore an expensive-looking suit over his protruding stomach. He wore rings adorned with gems on every one of his fingers. This man projected an image of wealth, broadcasting it so loudly as to be obnoxious and completely tasteless. Not even I could have worn something like that. He stood before me with a grin on his face that irritated me to no end. My lord, I am sure you cannot yet understand this, but these are simply the necessary expenses of my work. The numbers on the documents are not everything. This went on for some time as he rattled off countless excuses for the discrepancy in the document. Since I didn't know how valid any of his claims were, I sought Amagi's opinion. Artificial intelligence was handy at times like this. Without petty emotions, AIs prioritize simple efficiency. There is clear evidence of embezzlement, not to mention other crimes. The embezzlement alone is nothing but a hindrance to upkeep of the domain's facilities, of course, but there are also many expenditures which cannot possibly be called necessary. I took the electronic document Amagi had prepared for me and looked it over. It had much to say about the official standing before me. I was almost impressed that he was able to stand in front of me and smile. In addition to embezzlement, he'd manipulated human resources, paid bribes, everything you'd expect from your typical corrupt official. Hell, I had a lot to learn from this guy, aside from his fashion choices. One of the items on the list caught my eye. It said he'd erased one of his subordinates. He'd pinned his embezzlement on this man and executed him and his entire family. When I saw that, I decided to do with this official. The sight of him standing there, scarlet-faced, as he attempted to lecture me was almost comical. You mustn't trust what dolls say, my lord. They're the ones who almost destroyed human civilization. They're humanity's enemy. You're being deceived, my lord. True, I may have bent the rules here and there, but everyone does it. It's necessary to grease the wheels of a job like this, and dolls can't understand that. I ignored the official's lecture. I couldn't care less what he had to say. He'd reawakened memories that were practically boiling me from the inside. Those memories alone were enough to piss me off. Did you enjoy killing your subordinate? What did it feel like, pinning your crimes on him? Huh? I'm asking. Do you enjoy living your life after blaming your crimes on innocent men? I don't know what you're talking about. When I saw the sweat breaking out on the official's face, I recalled my former boss, the one who'd pinned his embezzlement on me. I saw his face superimposed on the official in front of me. It irritated me to no end. The man's eyes darted about as I glared silently at him. I suppose something like that may have happened. I placed my hand on the handle of the sword I'd taken to carrying around with me. Seeing that, Amagi stepped forward to stop me. "You mustn't, master." I drew my sword, and the official dropped all pretenses, finally telling me how he really felt. "Who do you think keeps you alive, boy? You only live like this because we support..." He was still yelling when I leapt at him and brought my sword down, cutting him in half. It only took a moment. After I'd bisected him, the official still wore a look of bewilderment, as if he couldn't understand what had happened. I was young, but I'd undergone physical strengthening and trained for 3 years. Killing a person was a simple task for me. The fruits of my efforts was clearly apparent. Blood sprayed from the halved official, dirtying my reception room, which just agitated me further. I felt that I shouldn't have called him here. Such a disgusting mouth. Amagi approached me and sprayed me with a cleansing foam. The foam quickly dissipated, taking the blood off my clothes and skin along with it. "Master, he is already dead," she pointed out. Hearing that, I regained a little bit of my cool. My emotions had gone a bit off the rails there. Even so, as I continued to stare down at the official's corpse, I felt the anger bubbling up within me once more. I'd cut him down because of his striking similarity to my boss in my previous life. The only one allowed to use my authority is me. Garbage like this one can die. Amagi, I want a thorough investigation. I'm executing every single one of these corrupt officials. I don't mind valuing the people who serve me well, but I won't allow anyone to make me their puppet. I'm the only one allowed to oppress my people. "Master, please let go." Amagi gently wrapped her hands around mine as I gripped my sword. I tried to release it, but my fingers wouldn't budge. "Huh? Allow me to help." She pulled each one of my fingers away from the handle of my sword. When I finally let go of it, I realized I was sweating profusely. Am I feeling... Sorry. I heard noise in the background. Am I feeling guilt over killing a person for the first time? If that was true, it was awfully pathetic for someone who aimed to become an evil lord. Amagi took my sword from me, cleaned off the blood, and returned it to its scabbard. "Regarding your earlier directive, if every corrupt official is disposed of, the chain of command will collapse. Are there that many of them? Yes. Corruption had been rampant for quite some time now. I can act as substitute, but I do not think that it will be enough for normal functions to continue. I don't want Amagi to have to shoulder all that herself either. So what's the solution? I would suggest employing several dolls suitable for their tasks, although they didn't have to be as sophisticated as me. That, or utilizing an artificial intelligence specialized in management. Artificial intelligence would be way more useful than these guys, I thought, as I looked down at the official again and listened to Amagi's proposal. The problem was what society would think of it. It's like Brian told me. Extensive use of artificial intelligence is frowned upon in the Empire. But that's got nothing to do with me, so why should I worry? After all, I'm going to be an evil lord. I didn't care what society thought, but I could at least keep up appearances. I just have to use artificial intelligence alongside humans. How many do we need? Amagi was quick to answer. 30 mass-produced units at minimum. The mansion still needs to be managed, after all. An additional unit specializing in governing as well as its auxiliary units should suffice. Most people in this world think artificial intelligence will betray you, so it can't be trusted. To that I say, so what? Humans will betray you too. No, humans are less trustworthy. I'll go with Amagi's proposal. Handle it. Are you sure, Master? It will affect your standing. I don't care. I trust you more than these guys. I gestured at the now silent official. I will make the arrangements. I narrowed my eyes and said, in a voice so low it surprised even me, I don't need anyone who defies me. Inside a bar in House Banfield's domain, there was a great hubbub about all the corrupt officials being purged one after another. Every single one of the bureaucrats who had taken advantage of their positions had been punished for some crimes or other. Hey, did you hear that the Lord cut down one of the officials himself? That's a lie. The kid's like 10, right? It's true. I heard it from a friend of mine who works in the government office. That friend of yours wasn't an official, was he? No, he just cleans the place. Ever since Liam had taken over, taxes had been going into maintaining facilities within his domain. The size of the military was being reduced, so soldiers were coming back down to the planet's surface to train for new jobs. Rumor had it that their space fleet, which was once 30,000 ships strong, had been reduced to a tenth of its size. While noting to himself that he had been getting more customers than usual lately, the bartender chatted with one of his regulars, who was reading an electronic newspaper. There was an article about Liam in it. You read this? They're changing compulsory education from 3 years to 6. I did, the bartender replied, handing the regular his drink. Heard they're hurrying to build schools, too. A customer in the construction business was laughing about how busy they are. Business is booming, huh? It'd be nice if some of that prosperity came my way. The regular was drinking more expensive alcohol than he usually ordered. This new lord we got is really something, though, huh? And he's only 10? The bartender put a hand on his hip. It's pretty unbelievable. 5 years ago, I never could have guessed this would happen. Once he finished his drink, the customer stared down at his empty glass. Hope the good news keeps up. The bartender nodded. Couldn't agree more. In his new mansion, Brian was training the freshly hired servants. All the new staff had been selected not just for their looks, but for their skills and character as well. Liam had dismissed anyone who had nothing to offer beyond their appearance. With serious, hardworking people before him, Brian felt moved. We finally have staff who will take their jobs seriously. There were quite a few among the staff who seemed rather frightened, however. Liam had recently exposed the wrongdoings of a great deal of corrupt officials, carrying out a massive political purge. All sorts of rumors about the young lord were whizzing around inside the domain. One of these claimed he was quick to anger and would cut down his servants if they displeased him. Brian attempted to dispel the fears of the new hires. I'm sure you must be nervous, but Master Liam is very forgiving of those who take their work seriously. There is no need to be afraid of him. A maid timidly raised her hand. Yes? Will Master Liam require, nightly duties? In this world, it was very much common for the master of a mansion to lay his hands on his workers, common enough that some women sold these services. The female staff were unsettled by the rumors around Liam. They were terrified that if they did sell themselves, they'd be killed for even the smallest mistake. Master Liam is still young, so you needn't worry about nightly duties. You will likely not even be near him very often, since Amagi takes care of almost all his personal needs. He keeps a doll by his side, someone said. Brian's eyes narrowed. I'll pretend I did not hear that this time, but there will not be another. Amagi was a problem that continued to plague Brian. Liam's standing would fall just by keeping her at his side. She was capable, but noble society would never look favorably upon her. After having worked with her for several years, however, Brian could see that Liam trusted her thoroughly. He relied on her almost like a child relies on their mother. Though he was young, Liam was stern and decisive, but even in his apparent maturity, he needed that mother figure. The thought pulled at Brian's heartstrings. Master Liam is a wise person. He must understand that he was abandoned. Master Cliff, Mistress Darcy, why did you not take more care in raising him? Brian couldn't bring himself to find fault with the boy. Liam was just trying to fulfill the obligations he'd been saddled with as Lord, and Amagi was one of the only figures that he could depend on. Amagi is very dear to Master Liam. I would suggest not taking a condescending attitude toward her. If Master Liam found out about such a thing, I would not be able to spare you from his wrath. Though he was young, Liam was already feared by many within his domain, but things are definitely getting better. With Master Liam, House Banfield will be able to regain its former glory. Liam's popularity was rising among his people for purging those corrupt officials. He was building up his reputation as a frightening yet reliable lord. Though he was still young, and his people were still nervous about what the future might hold, they were starting to acknowledge Liam's abilities. Brian believed in him, and he once again pledged his loyalty to his lord in his heart. Okay. I am going to read this last section, which is about another 13 pages. So this is going to actually be the start of chapter 4. So I've actually probably gone more chapters than I expected already, but I've just kind of been rolling with the flow on this. But after this, I am probably going to call it, because it's been a little while since I've actually been on stream for a bit, so I don't want to try to I don't want to try to push it too much since it's been a little while, so my voice is probably going to start frying in a bit. I can already tell there's a little bit of frying going on already, so I'll just do this last little bit, and then, like I said, we'll kind of call it from there. So let me go ahead and rehydrate real quick here. Chapter 4. Liam at 30. In my past life, being 30 years old would have meant a third of your life was behind you. By contrast, 30-year-olds in this world looked like elementary schoolers and were treated like kids. That part was fine, but there was one problem. No good, huh? I held my sheathed sword in my left hand and looked at the logs behind me. Of the 3 logs I'd placed, I'd at least managed to cut 2, but the execution had been rough. It was a far cry from the special technique Master had shown me. I'd cut far fewer logs, and they were closer to me than they'd been to him. I'd spent more than 20 years on this, and still I was only able to achieve a weak imitation. Did I just lack talent? Master watched me, arms folded and an impassive expression on his face. Was he disappointed? Becoming nervous, I bowed my head to him and apologized. I'm sorry, Master. My skills still pale in comparison to yours. Master was kind, though, and slowly shook his head. The path of the sword is a long and arduous one, and there is no prize at the end of it. You've improved much in the last 20 years. I'd been pondering for all those years how I could achieve what Master had shown me. I couldn't imagine it was something you attained just by practicing the basics. It was then that I recalled another component of the technique Master had mentioned long ago: magic. Of course, he used magic. By applying a thin layer of it over the blade, you can extend the sword's reach. Isn't that it? Through trial and error, I was eventually able to cut a log that my sword couldn't naturally reach. I hadn't been able to achieve this simply by training my body, and improving my fighting skills hadn't been enough either. My only option had been to use this world's magic. I thought I had reached the correct answer with this, but my attempts were still very different from Master's technique. Since I wasn't able to pull off the same thing, I was a little uneasy, but while I fretted that I had failed, Master clapped his hands, impressed. You've come so far. You're incredibly close. Still, you only get partial credit. Partial credit? That's right. If you're going to use magic, then you must study magic. But I am studying it. I was a noble, and a count at that, so it was only natural that I'd been studying magic. But in this world, or perhaps just this era, an individual's magical capability wasn't regarded as all that important. Magic wasn't going to protect you against a beam fired from a spaceship. The same principle applied to martial arts. Many nobles still studied them to some degree, but neither martial arts nor magic were a requirement for a noble station. Rather than learning attack magic and shooting flames from my hand, it would be more efficient to carry a gun. Not all magic was pointless. Healing magic was useful, for instance, and magic was very important in controlling the humanoid weapons of the current era. I would definitely have to learn how to connect with and pilot one of those weapons through the use of magic. Yes, well, just learning magic isn't sufficient. It isn't? I see. Just the basics won't be enough. I'll have to get more serious with my studies. I'll increase the degree of my magical studies at once. Master nodded vigorously. Was it just my imagination that he looked a tad nervous? Very good. You'll have to stop practicing the special technique for a while to make time. Concentrate on magic. Let's see. 10 years should be enough for a start. During that time, I want you to practice only the basics. And I was making such good progress too. I thought, frustrated, but I couldn't go against my master. If I ever tried to fight him, he would probably chop me to pieces in seconds. I couldn't even picture myself winning, so great was the difference in ability between the two of us. I understand. Very good. In any case, how are things with your domain? You won't be a very good lord if you spend all your time learning martial arts. How kind my master was to worry about my domain. It's fine. My reforms are moving along, and we're finally starting to see real results. The restructuring of both the military and the government had been going well. I'd decided on expanding some development plans and had started a couple of new projects as well. Manned construction machines and humanoid robots accomplished their work incredibly quickly. Skyscrapers could be erected in a matter of days. Once, I'd seen a structure being built by something like a huge 3D printer. It had rendered me speechless. This disc appeared in the sky, and before I could exclaim, "A UFO?" the disc emitted a light that had started to generate a building. People mostly just supplied support, checking the details as the disc did its work. I watched the whole structure being created as though it were fast-forwarded video, a pretty shocking sight. If the planet could be so quickly developed, then really, anyone could have done this before. It was a complete mystery to me why my parents and grandparents hadn't. Tax revenue easily increased this way, so there was no reason not to. That's good, Liam. Now, how about you show me how you're doing with the basics today? Yes, sir. It wouldn't mean much at this stage to just do so normally, though. From now on, let's blindfold you and add some weights. A blindfold and weights, you say? Master applied weights to my sword and blindfolded me. Swing the sword until it feels as light as a branch in your hands. The blindfold is to teach you that you can't just rely on your eyes. Yes, sir. I had absolute confidence in my master's training methods, but it was almost like something out of a manga. I'd enjoyed reading stuff like that when I was a kid, but similar entertainment was hard to come by in my domain. That was a rather undeveloped area, probably because people just didn't have the time or money for such things. Maybe I should have Omnigis and make some investments into the entertainment industry too. Yasushi trembled as he watched a blindfolded Liam swing his weighted sword. His face revealed his emotions since he knew Liam couldn't see him. What is this kid? Seriously, what is he? He'd been in a cold sweat ever since Liam had shown him his special technique. In the past, he just casually thought, wow, this kid's getting pretty good. He'd never expected Liam to recreate his parlor tricks as an actual sword technique. Even though he'd only taught the boy the basics, Liam was becoming strong all on his own, and that terrified Yasushi. After all, Liam had purged every single corrupt official from his domain. He'd been so thorough, it was hard to believe he was still a child. Yasushi had felt detached as he watched all that, thinking, ooh, scary. But if Liam's swordsmanship got any better, things could get very bad for him. If he finds out I was lying, I'm done for. He'll chop me to pieces in an instant. Yasushi had merely put on an air of wisdom and fed the boy some pretty words. Liam was already a far better swordsman than him, and if they were to fight, Yasushi could say with absolute confidence that he would lose. I gotta drag this out to save up some money, then get the hell out of here as soon as I can. All this time, Yasushi had been lazing around and living a life of relative luxury, burning through his pay as soon as he got it. He'd lied to Liam, telling him he was going off to train while he was actually going into the city to have some fun. He didn't have the funds to make a run for it now. He wiped the perspiration from his brow as he watched Liam adjust his motions with the blindfold on. How could he have come so far? Is this kid some kind of genius? Yasushi was no instructor, and his sword skills were third-rate. He couldn't truly gauge the degree of Liam's talent. I can't tell. Anyway, I gotta buy some time now. I'll look for more videos on training ideas. If I don't and he finds out, he'll kill me. Yasushi had no choice but to stick around despite his fears so he could accrue the funds necessary for his escape. He desperately got to scheming, praying that Liam wouldn't discover his lies. Is there any reason for the blindfold? I'd wondered at first, but after a while, I caught on to the meaning behind it. I understand what you meant now, Master. I'm starting to figure out how to use my other senses. This is what you meant by not relying on my eyes. I looked at Master with the blindfold on. He moved around to get out of my view, so I followed him with my head. You mastered that in such a short time, he said, sounding a little surprised. Really, how did you do this in just a few years? He was so baffled by my growth, I could tell he was cocking his head even with the blindfold on. I spun my weighted sword playfully around my fingers. Look, I can swing it so easily now. Oh yeah. No, you can't get conceited. Huh? Master was a little harsh when I showed him how confident I was. It's true you have honed your other senses, Lord Liam, but that's all you've done. You haven't made them extraordinary yet. I was surprised to hear this. So there's even more I can do to avoid relying on my vision? Of course there is. And that sword is too light for you now, isn't it? I'll prepare a special one for you. I felt myself getting excited. I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad. Huh? Master almost seems scared. Is it just my imagination? Yeah, has to be. You gotta be kidding me. Yasushi was terrified when Liam followed his movements with blindfolded eyes, while swinging his weighted sword around like it was nothing. He couldn't just act like a normal person with that blindfold on. Now could he? No matter where Yasushi moved, Liam kept turning his face toward him, knowing exactly where he was. He tried to move soundlessly, but it was pointless. All throughout, Liam was smiling. It was creepy. What to do? What to do? I didn't think he'd adapt this quickly. Yasushi had tried to buy time with a ridiculous scheme, but it hadn't even taken a few years for Liam to actually learn the skill he only pretended to be teaching him. Seriously, is he a genius? If only I'd known he was like this sooner. Yasushi had no way to predict the extent of Liam's potential. I'll make a super heavy sword and have him use that. That should give him some problems. Yasushi had been talking out of his ass about a sixth sense and supernatural abilities, but he worried that if he kept it up, Liam would truly develop those skills. The thought terrified him. Hoping to buy some more time, Yasushi came up with a fresh plan. Oh, I know. That'll be perfect. Yasushi made his way to a storehouse in the mansion grounds. This building contained artwork and other items stored during the demolition of the previous mansion. He'd already tried selling off some of the items inside, but they were all fakes. One of the pieces in the storehouse was an aged humanoid weapon, a mobile knight. It was a large model of the 24-meter class, unlike the 14 or 18-meter types more popular nowadays. A black behemoth with huge shields mounted on both shoulders. This model was several generations old, probably built hundreds of years ago. It had been used by Liam's great-grandfather, Alistair, and it was inferior in every way to modern mass-produced models. Yasushi brought Amagi to the storehouse and pointed to the mobile knight. Make this usable, would you? I'm going to train Liam in it. Amagi gave him a dubious look. This model is quite old. Would it not be better to ready a current model for him? You can't do that. What worried Yasushi was that the latest mobile knights were extremely easy to pilot. Their specs had improved so much that if someone like Liam, who had loads of time on his hands, got into one, he'd master its control in a matter of years. Yasushi couldn't buy time if that happened. This is for Lord Liam's sake. I'd like you to have it repaired and ready for use. These models are no longer in production. Repairing it will take some time. The 14 and 18 meter models are more commonplace now, so I'd recommend using one of those. Amagi was only treating Yasushi with respect due to Liam's regard for him. If not for that, she would have been far more insistent. What do I care about your difficulties? I'll make you spend a fortune on it. That much less cash to use later to chase me down. Yasushi urged Amagi to make use of the old weapon. Old models are more solidly made. If you give it some upgrades, it'll end up sturdier than the new models. It is not that simple. When you balance it out, it is more economical to make use of a current model. No, this one will be better. You should just turn this craft into the ultimate model for Liam's personal use. Don't concern yourselves with the budget. There is no logic in using this craft. It is simply a matter of customizing a newer one for Master's use. It will be cheaper as well. Yasushi decided to force the issue, since Amagi wouldn't stop arguing with him. Regardless, I want you to make adjustments to this unit. It will be better for Lord Liam that way. And he should learn to pilot it manually. Automatic controls are out of the question. People rely too much on machine assistance these days. There's only meaning in it if you pilot it yourself. He has to use a machine that requires actual skill. Yes, that's for the best. All Yasushi wanted was for Liam to use a machine that would be difficult to pilot, but Amagi would never agree with such a thing. If the weapon functions well, should he not rely on it? No, he shouldn't. This is something Lord Liam needs to learn. At Yasushi's insistence, Amagi had no choice but to oblige. She'd been ordered by Liam to comply with Yasushi's request as much as possible. If you insist, I will hurry and make the arrangements. Please, use as much money as you need. This is for Lord Liam, after all. Yasushi piled on all the additions to the mobile knight he could think of in order to restrain their funds. After Yasushi left the warehouse, Amagi looked up the mobile knight. Personal designation, Avid. Its inner frame showed in places, and parts of its armor had rusted. The interior was even worse, so it couldn't currently be piloted. The machine had been left there to rot. As she gazed upon the pitiful sight of the Avid, Amagi thought to herself, is that man truly a skilled fighter? It's true that Master has gotten stronger, but Yasushi just does not seem terribly impressive to me. Based on his normal behavior, she couldn't imagine Yasushi was possessed of an incredible skill. Still, as long as the man was producing results, there was no real reason to fire him. No matter how deeply I investigate him, I never find anything suspicious. In fact, his record is almost unnaturally clean. It was almost as if someone had manipulated his record to appear that way. I am obligated to carry out his orders. However, she wasn't sure where to send the Avid for maintenance, but it would have to be a large manufacturer with enough skill to craft the required parts. This was something like taking a classic foreign sports car to a local repair shop. The shop wouldn't have the parts to repair it, and they wouldn't know how to go about performing maintenance either. It made sense to try the original manufacturer. This one was manufactured by an Empire factory. The Empire-controlled facility that had made the machine was still in business, so it was likely the best place to send it. Amagi mulled over Yasushi's requests. He asked for a great deal. Will we have the funds for all this? In any case, I must proceed. She would have a mechanic examine the Avid and then contact the manufacturer. She reached out and touched the Avid. She'd rejected Yasushi's suggestions again and again, but there was something almost envious in her expression. I will do everything I can to restore you, so please protect my master. When she removed her hand, her face regained its usual neutrality. She left the storehouse, mentally running through the steps necessary to restore the Avid. Along the way, she found Liam walking her way with a blindfold on. He looked delighted when he noticed her. Those footsteps must be Amagi. You are correct, Master. Though blindfolded, he'd been walking as if he could see where he was going. Master, it is dangerous to walk around like that. It's fine. It's part of my training. Anyway, I heard you were getting a mobile knight ready for me. Amagi told them about the requests Yasushi had made for the mobile knight. He would like an old model to be repaired for use, even though a newer one would be more within our budget. Bringing a hand to his chin, Liam cocked his head. My master must have his reasons. Anyway, I'll leave it to you. I'm gonna take a walk around the mansion. Liam left with the blindfold still on, but Amagi was concerned that he would fall, so she followed him along behind him. The bar in House Banfield's domain was thriving again today. Cheers! A group of men who had stopped in on their way home from work were drinking and laughing. There were still occasional fights here, but it was a far cry from 30 years ago. The seats were fuller than they were empty now, and the bartender fondly watched the staff he had hired as they hurried around about their tasks. One of his regulars called out, "Looks like business is booming, barkeep." Yeah, I was finally able to hire some help. Unlike before, when he had only been able to sell cheap liquor, there was some pretty expensive booze flying off his shelves these days. The regular who'd spoken was also dressed better than he used to be, and the drink he sipped was higher quality than his old swill. He previously seemed to want to drown himself in booze, but now he could savor the finer stuff. The bartender pivoted the conversation. By the way, how's work? It's great. Too great, really. I'm too busy. The regular, who had previously complained about not having any work, was now griping about having too much. His expressions were cheery, though, as if he felt truly fulfilled. Hard to believe things could change so much just because we got a new lord, he mused, reflecting on the past. The bartender readied another drink for him and responded, "If my grandpa's to be believed, things were even better in his time. How many hundreds of years ago was this? 4 or 5? Strange how things were more developed back then. House Banfield's domain was starting to win back some of their former vitality. The Lord's been pretty quiet lately, though. Haven't heard a thing about him in the last 20 years. No one had heard a peep from Liam since his big political purge 2 decades ago. There were rumors, of course. Again, sorry, lag. There were rumors, of course, but all of them lacked credibility. The bartender was curious, too. I've heard he really likes dolls, but it's hard to hold it against him when he is doing such a great job. I thought all nobles hated dolls. Guess this noble's different. Can't say I care either way. As long as business is this good, I couldn't be happier." The regular bought the bartender a drink, and the two of them made a toast to their future prosperity. Well, actually, that was all of chapter 4. So, we have actually covered the first 6 chapters of I'm the Evil Lord of an Intergalactic Empire. Went on a little longer, a good bit longer than I expected. It was probably, I'd actually intended on switching up novels midway, but I guess with all the issues that I'd had in the beginning of this, I didn't really want to just kind of go through the trouble of trying to click through and open up a new book and stuff. So anyway, this was a pretty, this was a long test stream, but I hope you enjoyed the book. What'd you guys think of it? So, the prologue, the first chapter, was kind of rough, a bit of a downer and stuff with the way it described, but it kind of picked up afterwards. They didn't dwell too much on the whole negativity portion of the storyline. They just did that in the prologue to kind of really set the stage, although like I said, it was kind of a drag. So I'm glad it kind of picked back up afterwards. But I hope you enjoyed it. So, that being said, it has already been 3 hours. Like I said, I covered like 6 chapters, including the prologue of the book. So, I forget who publishes the book. Let me check the copyright notice and stuff real quick here. Or this might not be a very quick process because, like I said, my computer is still lagging stuff. So, still having an issue with OBS, with it, kind of killing the resources on my machine, but it does, at least it came back up, which I was having problems with before. Okay, yeah, so I'm the Evil Lord of an Intergalactic Empire. It's published in English by 7 Seas Entertainment. So if you're interested in taking a look at the book, you can actually go ahead and go to Seven Seas and pick it up from there. Other than that, like I said, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it here. I do appreciate you guys for coming by and hanging out with me on this little bit of a test stream. Or a comeback stream, maybe, an unofficial type comeback. So, thank you guys so much for coming in and hanging out. I hope you had a good time, and again, you're able to come in and just hang back and chill and relax. For those of you still conscious, I hope you enjoyed it. For those of you who just kind of hung back and dozed off and just kind of, used me as background sounds and everything, I hope you have a good night and enjoy everything. So that's going to be it for me for this evening. I am going to try to get back to my regular schedule of Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So unless something comes up, my next stream should be this coming Saturday, and I will actually wind up posting it on my Twitter. And then, I'll eventually get to publishing my schedule once I get back to things as things are kind of stabilizing for me now. So, that said, I hope you guys have a chill night, or a chill rest of your day, whatever applies. And if you're listening to the VOD later, I hope you just enjoy the relaxation and chill. So until then, I will talk to you guys next time. But bye for now.